Marvel, from Mecha creator to Ultraman legend, episode 81. Hearing such a voice, Roth sneered and ignored it, thinking that he was the kind of stunned blue-like dream bias. He didn't mind letting the demon witch detonate the liquefied gas plant directly. Meanwhile, the demon witch also seemed to have discovered a huge black shadow in the sky, only to see that it actually stopped rampage forward, but roared up to the sky. "Look at you proud, let me teach you a good lesson." Seeing that the demon witch was actually so rampant and provocative, Roth decisively fell from the sky with a flying kick. Thundered. The power of this flying kick was very terrifying, and it directly kicked the demon witch back and knocked down several tall buildings. But that's not the end of it. Roth either doesn't make a shot, and if he wants to shoot, he will attack with all his might. I saw that he pulled out the spikum chopping knife behind him, jumped up and then slashed heavily. While a loud, sonorous sound shattered the glass of the surrounding buildings. Roth was a little shocked, but he didn't expect that the shell of this demon witch was so hard, and this knife actually just cut a white mark on the shell. Roar! The demon witch was not only passively beaten, but saw its two large pincers clamped towards Lot. But that's too slow. Roth just took a step back and dodged, and then he held Spikum's slashing knife in both hands and swept across the ground. Poof! The demon witch couldn't dodge, and the crab leg was actually cut off directly. Rumble! Without the support of her legs, the demon witch fell with a bang. Obviously, compared to the hardback, the demon witch's leg defense is simply incomparable. Sure enough, this kaiju beast is much weaker than the corrosive monster. Thinking of this, only he kicked his foot out. The huge force directly flipped the demon witch to the ground, revealing her soft belly. Without any hesitation, he clenched Spichum's slashing knife with both hands and slashed it again. Poof! The knife of 217 cut directly into the abdomen of the demon witch, and a large amount of yellow liquid gushed out. It is clear that this knife has hit the point. Sure enough, the demon witch was directly pronounced dead after struggling for a moment. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing the demon witch and earning 30,000 points. Seeing that the witch had disappeared and the task had been completed, Roth was relieved. After this battle, he did find that the kaiju beast was much weaker than ordinary monsters. Of course, this is only a second-level monster. There are also these 3rd, 4th, and 5th level kaiju beasts on it. As far as he knew, there were at least a few level 4 wormholes plus a level 5 kaiju beast. With his strength alone, it is absolutely impossible to complete the task. Meanwhile, seeing that huge monster was destroyed, everyone in Tokyo cheered. And it's not just Tokyo, people who follow it online are cheering. In the war between humans and monsters, once again, humanity has triumphed. Tony, who watched this scene, also smiled and then turned off the picture. He had previously received a special alloy crafting method from Roth, so he didn't go when Nick Fury informed him. Because it's useless to go. He just wants to build the anti-monster armor as soon as possible now, but he can't keep Roth alone in the limelight. Thinking of this, he turned around and continued to work. Meanwhile, after receiving the 30,000 points rewarded by the system, Roth does not plan to stay longer. After recovering Uendum, he came to Susan and Gwen's side. "Lot, you're amazing." Gwen gave him a thumbs up, and she wouldn't mind offering a kiss if they weren't all in armor. "You're pretty good here, aren't you?" Roth smiled. "Well, we've already rescued a dozen people in a while, but many of them have been crushed under the collapsed houses, and it's a little difficult to get out." Susan folded her hands to her chest and frowned. Even if she could easily move the reinforced concrete blocks, she couldn't do it too fast. After all, if you are not careful, it will cause a secondary collapse. And once a secondary collapse occurs, then the trapped people below can be dangerous. Do your best. Roth didn't care. "I'll go back first, and you'll follow later." Susan and Gwen looked at each other, then nodded. Both of them knew exactly what he planned next. As early as after the second attack, Roth knew very well that his whereabouts were constantly being watched. Once there is a chance, the people behind the scenes will take the opportunity to attack him. And this time is an opportunity. He was betting on whether the people behind the scenes would take this opportunity to attack him again. So this time he did not plan to fly back directly, but to use an ordinary private jet. "Sky, the next moment is to think about the abnormality around me, and once an enemy plane approaches, immediately lock it onto me. Fly in a private jet on Roth to Sky Road." Understood. Sky was very clever, and she guessed from just a few words and Lot's actions that he was most likely trying to use himself as bait to lure the enemy into attacking. This made her also very curious. Who wants the other party steal Superman? Sitting leisurely in a private jet drinking red wine, even Roth paid special attention to the situation on the internet. There are hot searches on TikTok all about the appearance of monsters in the island country this time. Some videos of him fighting monsters after he appears also have a very high hit-through rate. It's just that the comments below are also mixed, and most people still think that Steel Superman is the hero who saved the island country. But a few believe that Tokyo would not have been destroyed if Superman had come earlier. For such remarks, there are naturally many people who abuse. Shaking his head with a smile, Lot didn't care too much about it. Lot, there is a special signal approaching, it is 2 fighters. Coming, good. Roth drank the red wine from his glass and put on his Saiwen armor. Be careful, the other party has started to attack. Sky, who was watching through satellite surveillance, couldn't help but exclaim. The next moment, several tracking missiles accurately hit the private plane he was on. Thundered. With an explosion, a sea of fire suddenly burst into the sky. Roth. Seeing the destruction of the private jet, Sky was a little worried. And the 2 fighters seemed to have learned to be smart, they did not leave directly when passing by the exploding flames, but turned around and returned. It's just that after discovering that the plane had fallen, but Roth had not escaped, he flew away. Roth. Are you still there? Sky shouted several times in a row but did not respond, which made her frown. Don't worry, I'm not that easy to die. Hearing that this chick had been making noise in his ears, Lot had no choice but to answer. That's good. Hearing his voice, Sky was relieved. Give me those 2 enemy planes. Understood. Sky nodded seriously, then focused all his attention on satellite monitoring to make sure he didn't lose it. Of course, Roth didn't put all his chips on satellite surveillance. Just now, Hope, which had shrunk to the size of an ant, had entered the interior of the enemy aircraft at this time. Now she only needs to wait for the plane to return home to know who is behind it. That's what Roth planned from the beginning. He wanted to see who was calculating behind his back. 2 hours later. Lot, the enemy plane has stopped, located at a military base outside Washington. Soon Sky and Hope simultaneously gave the location of the enemy plane's landing. At the military base, it is really a ghost of the military of the ugly country. Roth snorted coldly, since he already knew that it was the military that did it, then there was no need to give the military a face. Hope, you hide first, I'll be right there. After speaking, he quickly disappeared into the sky. More than an hour later. A military base hidden deep in the deserted mountains. You're finally here. As soon as he arrived, an ant-sized Hope came out of the side. Is this the place? That's right, those 2 enemy planes are parked over there. Hope pointed to the tarmac in front of the barracks, not far away. He looked over, and sure enough, the 2 fighters were the enemy planes that had attacked him before. Do you want to kill these soldiers directly? Read violent novels, just go to Feilu Fiction Network. Maybe it's because of what he did last time in the 10 Rings gang, that's why Hope asked this. However, Roth shook his head, no, to avoid the other party destroying the evidence, let's not startle the snake for the time being, let's listen to the intelligence first. Okay, I'll leave this to me. Hope nodded, and was about to narrow down and enter the barracks to inquire about intelligence. This kind of thing is familiar to her, and no one will notice her becoming the size of an ant. I'll go in with you. Roth wasn't going to watch outside. You? Hope wondered how he was going to get in. The corners of Roth's mouth rose slightly, and then activated the stealth system on Saiwen's armor. Since giving the Saiwen Armor Elder the stealth system, it has hardly been used a few times, and now is the time to use this function. After entering the optical stealth, his whole person disappeared in an instant. Lot? Hope was stunned for a moment, and then shouted in a low voice. I'm right next to you, I'm just entering stealth, let's go. Hope suddenly realized, then she shrunk to the size of an ant, and then flew forward and stopped on Lot's shoulder. Then the 2 swaggered into the military base. Meanwhile, in a room at a military base. How's it going? A frivolous voice came into the communicator. At this time, a man in military uniform in the room replied, Colonel Hornby, we have once again succeeded in destroying the plane on which Iron Superman is riding, and we did not find that Steel Superman escaped. I think he must have died in the explosion. Are you sure? This? Of course, no matter how powerful Iron Superman is, he is just an ordinary person, even if he can defeat monsters. Last time he got away with it, this time we have confirmed that the other party did not escape from the plane explosion. 0 inch. So it's true, ha ha ha, Steel Superman, you definitely can't think that I'm dealing with you. As long as you die, then Ultra technology is not owned by me, then the giant armor will be my thing, haha. There was an arrogant laugh on the other side of the phone. I just said who was making small moves behind it, but I didn't expect it to be you. At this moment, Roth and Hope, who happened to have listened to the conversation between the 2, violently opened the room and walked in. What people? The man in military uniform was startled, and when he turned around and saw Steel Superman wearing an armored body, he was immediately scared into a cold sweat. What's going on? On the other side of the communicator came Hornby Williams' questioning voice. Hornby on. Colonel, we are exposed, Steel. Steel Superman has arrived. The man in military uniform replied tremblingly. After a moment of silence on the communicator, he hung up the phone directly. And when the man in military uniform heard the busy tone of the phone, his face suddenly turned gray. What happened to Colonel Sweet? At this time, the soldiers who heard the movement came to check. The man in uniform, that is, Colonel Sweet, suddenly sprang up with a glimmer of hope when he heard this. Steel Superman, I am just acting on orders. If you want to find it, find Colonel Hornby. It has nothing to do with me at all. Besides, my brothers are outside now, and if the fish is broken, it is not good for everyone. Fish dead, net broken? Lot sneered and shook his head. Sorry, the fish will die, the net will not break. Hearing this, Colonel Sweet's pupils shrank sharply, and he knew that this matter could not be good. If that's the case, then he can only preemptively do it. There are intruders, let me kill them at all costs. Colonel Sweet yelled, then pulled out his pistol from his waist and shot. Bang bang. The bullet hit the armor completely useless, and even the bullet that bounced back pierced his own thigh. Forget it, since you already know who the murderer behind the scenes is, then there is no need to stay here. When Lot's words fell, he pulled Hope directly into the ceiling and flew into the sky. Seeing this, Colonel Sweet did not have time to snicker, so he saw a dazzling white light shining down from the shattered ceiling. This light is actually more dazzling than the sun. When he came closer, his eyes suddenly bulged in fright. The next moment, the white light directly enveloped him. Boom rumble. In the sky, Roth looked expressionlessly at the military base that had been flattened by his plasma cannon, and only after confirming that no one had escaped did he retract his gaze. Is it really good for us to deal with the military of the ugly country like this? Hope frowned slightly, although she didn't say anything when Lot destroyed this military base. She was extremely worried in her heart. After all, this is against the military of the ugly country. Don't worry, the military of the ugly country doesn't dare to do anything to me. Roth waved his hand without care, not to mention that he now has the capital to compete with the country. If the military dares to trouble him, he will not care the next time the monster appears. At that time, the losses of the ugly country will be even greater. Moreover, this time he is on the side of reason. It was your ugly military who dealt with him again, and he deserved to be found. 0.9. If it was before corrupting the monster, he really couldn't deal with the ugly country's military. But after seeing the horror of monsters and the power of giant armor in the world's major countries, whoever wants to deal with him has to weigh it. What's more, he still has this ultra-satellite chain, a hidden killer. A chain of hundreds of satellites is like a Skynet, covering most of the world, and can use laser weapons to accurately kill targets. Provoked him, so the ugly country military did not want to escape. Okay then. Hope saw that he looked fearless, and could only accept it helplessly. Let's go. Since it has been confirmed that the mastermind behind the scenes is Colonel Hornby William of the military, then there is no need to keep him. The destruction of this military base was just the beginning, and Roth had no intention of letting the other side go. He remembered that the last time he was dealing with a corrupt monster, the first time the military called was this arrogant guy. Unexpectedly, he actually held a grudge all the time and took revenge behind his back. If it wasn't for catching him this time, I really didn't know that this guy was actually dealing with himself behind his back. Wait, Lot, I found some information about Colonel Hornby William. He is the son of General William, if you deal with him. Sky's words were not finished. But needless to say, both of them understood that General William's status in the military of the ugly country was very high, and it was a bit troublesome to deal with his son. Are you alright? Tell me where Colonel Hornby William is now? Roth did not pay any attention to the so-called General William. He wanted to kill, and no one could stop him. Well, the other party is now in the White House on Pennsylvania Avenue in Northwest Washington. Sky had no choice but to tell the exact location of the other party. The White House. For the White House, a place with a special status in the ugly country, he had long wanted to see it, but he did not expect it to be in this situation. Episode 82. Let's go. Without stopping much, the two quickly disappeared into the sky. Only a large hole that had been bombed out of the area remained, and if it weren't for some wreckage buildings around, no one would believe that this was once a military base. Half an hour later, the two had arrived outside the White House. Lot, do we really want to do it directly? Hope has always felt that this is very unreliable. After all, this is the symbol of the ugly country, where the president's office is located. She knows that Roth has huge armor and is not afraid of the military, but doing so will prevent the ugly president from stepping down. At that time, even if you don't want to turn heads with him, you won't be able to. I'm not that stupid. Roth chuckled, and then activated the stealth system possessed by Saiwen Armor. Yes. And this, Hope patted her head, she actually forgot that Roth could be invisible. Let's go. Lot, who was in a stealth state, walked directly towards the White House, and Hope saw that his body shrank to the size of an ant and followed. The two ignored the patrol guard in front of the White House and swaggered in. Meanwhile, Colonel Hornby's face was very ugly, and judging from the voice coming from the communicator before, he seemed to have been exposed. Unexpectedly, the other party actually came directly to the door. Fortunately, he is in the White House, but he is not worried that the other party will come directly to the door. However, the matter is clearly not resolved. Damn, if it wasn't for him, how could I possibly deal with Steel Superman? What should I do now? Hornby William was a little annoyed, and after thinking about it, he still called the guy who encouraged himself to deal with Steel Superman. Colonel William, it's not good to call me at this time. As soon as the phone was connected, a relatively old voice came from the face. Mr. Pierce, it's all to blame for your idea. I have been discovered by Steel Superman. I'm afraid Steel Superman won't let me go. Hornby William said with some annoyance. The man called Mr. Pierce on the other side of the phone was silent for a while and said, Colonel William, don't be nervous. I don't think Steel Superman will attack you. After all, there is the entire military standing behind you. 10. But I got the news that he had wiped out a military base with his own hands. Yes. Is that so? Then deal with him in the way of public opinion. He is a superhero. If the matter of the military is exposed, the other party will definitely have some scruples. Is this really okay? Hornby William was a little skeptical. Don't worry, the other party doesn't dare to mess around. Who are you talking about? At this moment, a strange and familiar voice sounded in the room, which directly startled Colonel Hornby William. The other side of the phone hangs up directly after a moment of silence. At this time, Roth and Hope and Stealth revealed their figures. In fact, they had found this place since the beginning of the conversation between the two just now. What he didn't expect was that the murderer behind the whole thing was not Colonel Hornby William in front of him, he was just driven by others. The real murderer behind it is a man named Pierce. So who is this person? Roth thought for a moment, and suddenly had an answer in his heart. Alexander Pierce, former director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and one of the leaders of Hydra. There are intruders. Bang! Hornby William saw that the situation was not good and wanted to shout for the guards, but was kicked to the ground by Hope. Be honest with me, or I'll kill you now. Hope threatened viciously. Seeing this, William Hornby was immediately stunned. He didn't dare to bet on whether the other party would make a move before the guards came. Say, who is the man who instructed you to deal with me? Say it, and maybe I'll let you go. Roth asked coldly with his hands on his chest. Say, I say. Hearing that there was a chance to live, Horn dared to hide it more than William. The person who instructed me to deal with you was Alexander Pierce, the former director of S.H.I.E.L.D. This matter has nothing to do with me at all. If you want revenge, find him. Sure enough, it's him. Roth narrowed his eyes, but he didn't expect that the mastermind behind the deal with him was really Alexander Pierce, one of the leaders of Hydra. But it makes sense to think about it. After all, Alexander Pierce himself is a crazy man. Just as he did in Team America 2, borrow the Sky Carrier to eliminate all those who pose a threat to Hydra. Whether it's Iron Man or Team America, these Avengers are all in the clearance of targets. Perhaps because his recent performance made Alexander Pierce very jealous, he would be the first to target himself. Lot, there seems to be someone coming outside. This is Hope reminding. Let's go. Roth went stealthy again and then destroyed the communications equipment here, although it didn't do much. But as long as he does not leave definitive evidence for the military of the ugly country, then the military cannot do anything about him. Seeing this, Hope shrunk and stood on his shoulders. And Hornby William couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when he saw the two suddenly disappear. It seemed that his life was held. However, just when he had this idea, he suddenly found that his neck was pinched by something, and he couldn't breathe all of a sudden. Click. Before he could struggle, his neck was directly pinched. After doing all this, Roth and Hope quietly left the room. When the guards broke into the room, the alarm was directly sounded, and General William's son was actually assassinated. This incident was like a thunderbolt on a sunny day, which caused a sensation in the entire White House. The other side. Roth and Hope returned to New York, not because he didn't want to take out Alexander Pierce right now, but because he didn't know where the other was right now. Although Alexander Pierce is only the former director of S.H.I.E.L.D., the current S.H.I.E.L.D. can be said to be Serpent Shield. It's not easy to find the exact location of the other person. And he didn't put Alexander Pierce, the Hydra head, in his eyes at all. He had more important things to do than this. That's about the Wormhole Project. Now the whole world knows the horror of giant monsters. If he takes out the design drawings of the giant armor at this time, then he will definitely be robbed by various countries. But this is what he wants, when the time comes, to sell the drawings of the giant armor to various countries. He can even help countries build giant armor. As long as the countries have finished building the giant armor, then the Wormhole Project can be launched. When the time comes, summon the wormhole, and all the countries will be his thugs. And once the wormhole is destroyed, you can get 500,000 points. With these 500,000 points, he directly exchanged the Saiwen Ultraman shapeshifter without hesitation. Once transformed into Saiwen Ultraman, even the purple potato essence will only be needed by him at will. Alexander Pierce is nothing compared to this plan. Just make a little time to clean up when you find him. Thinking of this, he decisively spent 10,000 points to exchange the first generation of Pacific Rim Mecha Tango Wolf in the system. This is the first generation mecha and the first generation machine. Its operating system is the Nautilus 4SNYC system. The power core is a 1SO-THOC processor, which belongs to the nuclear drive, that is, the nuclear fusion reactor. Its body size is very large, and it is generally placed on the chest area of the mecha. Of course, this nuclear drive is much worse than Tony Stark's arc reactor, not just its size. However, big also has big benefits. The nuclear drive system can support the huge armor for several hours, so there is absolutely no problem in terms of energy. However, since the pilots of the mecha use multiplayer common driving, the requirements for the pilots are very high. A single pilot cannot withstand the pressure brought by mecha. Multiple people need to drive at the same time, and they must be of the same mind. Unless it is a person with particularly strong mental power. Just like Roth himself, his Wying Dam also uses brain sensors to control the entire body, and if the mental power is too weak, it is impossible to drive the mecha body. The reason why Tony Stark only created a giant armor 20 meters high last time was also because of this reason. However, with his unusual spiritual power, it is no problem to control the giant armor. As for the armament of the original mech, it is relatively rudimentary, with only heavy mortars and long-range missiles that can be launched. Read violent novels, just go to Feilu Fiction Network. Ra thought about it, maybe when the time comes, the weapon can also be taken out and sold. For example, weapons such as plasma cannons, laser cannons, and energy cannons. Of course, the only thing that can be sold is these conventional weapons. He wasn't stupid enough to sell weapons like the Spikum sword. With a complete plan, the next thing he needs to do is to make the first generation of Pacific Rim Mecha, the Tango Wolf. Of course, before the plan begins, he calls together the core members of the Ultra team, Susan, Gwen, Banner, Elect Roman, Hope, and finally, Sky. Today's Ultra team, plus his own words, also has 7 people. Roth looked at everyone with satisfaction, and then said that he was going to build giant armor and sell these armors to various countries. That's a great idea. After hearing this, Banner couldn't help but nod his head, expressing great support. After all, he also saw that monsters have appeared very frequently recently. Relying on Roth alone is somewhat dangerous after all. If he can't defeat the monster, won't the whole world be in danger of being destroyed by the monster? I agree too. Gwen is very kind and simple-minded, so she also very much agrees with this plan. Once countries have huge armor, then there will not be so many people to sacrifice. Obviously, during this time, she was more or less influenced by black fans on the internet. Susan and Hope nodded and agreed to the plan. As for the Electric Light Man and Max, not to mention, he had no idea of opposing at all. What about you? Lot looked at Sky, who had been silent. Sky was stunned, then smiled and waved his hand. Don't care what I think. If you have any ideas, just say it. Lot raised an eyebrow and motioned for her to hurry up. Okay then. Sky had no choice but to say what was in her heart. Actually, I'm worried that if the mecha drawings are handed over to the major powers, will it cause a world war? And if the outlaws get the mecha, will it create turmoil? And will the ugly country deal with us after getting the mecha? Sky asked several questions in a row. This surprised everyone. In fact, Susan and Banner did not think about this matter, but out of trust in Lot, they did not say it. And after Sky's reminder, everyone also thought about it. Lot was also a little surprised that she actually thought of so many questions at once, but this was not a problem at all in his opinion. Don't worry about causing a world war, it's almost impossible, and even if someone uses the mecha on the battlefield, we can take it back on our behalf, and even when selling the mecha, we can sign a contract, and we can't use the mecha for human war. This solution is very good, and it also avoids the misuse of mecha by various countries. Banner couldn't agree with his idea. Susan and Gwen both nodded in agreement. As for whether you will use mecha against us? Is this still a concern? It is certain that when the time comes to create mecha for various countries, Roth will definitely keep a hand. Therefore, it is impossible to use the mecha he created against him. And just Alice can control these mechs at will. Okay then, I'm okay. Sky shrugged, hearing him say this really was nothing to worry about. Okay, next Sky, you are ready to prepare. Huh? What do you want me to prepare? Sky looked at him with a confused expression. Of course, I am ready to sell mecha. Susan is now busy with the company's affairs, this matter must not be allowed for her to handle. Gwen will also have to go to school, and Hope will have to deal with the affairs of the PIM company, so this matter can only be handled by you. 280, what about you? Sky was a little incredulous. Me? Of course, I'm building mechs, but don't worry, I'll let them help you. All you have to do is contact various countries about selling Mecha, but Sky shook her head repeatedly, she didn't think she could do such an important thing. Don't worry, you can definitely do it, and won't you Chinese a lot of words? I am very relieved that this task is entrusted to you. Lot patted her shoulder and laughed. That. Alright, helplessly, Sky could only take this task with trepidation. Susan and Gwen looked at each other, and although they were a little skeptical that Lot had entrusted Sky with this important task, they did not say anything. After all, they really don't have time. Banner's words didn't know much about business, let alone Max, a wire worker. That's how things are set. For the next 3 months, he finished immersing himself in developing mechs. And Alexander Pierce seems to have given up his attack on him, so these 3 months can be considered calm. Of course, Roth did not forget to summon a few small monsters for Gwen and Susan to practice. By the way, you will receive 9,000 points. Plus the exact 100,000 points you earned before. Of course, after removing the 10,000 points spent between these 2 months, there are only 90,000 left. Because he exchanged Ace Armor. The reason for redeeming Ace Armor is naturally that there is no need to say more. Because Ace Armor has the most light skills among the Ultra Brothers, although it is impossible to fully restore all of Ace Ultraman's skills using technology. But even having 5 of them is already very powerful. The 5 light skills are Metal Limb Ray, Ultra Disc Blade, Ultra Barrier, Slash Ray, and Vertical Guillotine. Metal Limb Light is the most basic light skill of Ace Ultraman, and its power is very strong, which belongs to the special move. The Ultra Disc Blade is shot from the right hand in the form of gathering energy into a halo, hence the title of the Saw of Light. Ultra Barrier is currently the only defensive skill, and Roth is very optimistic about this skill. The Slashing Ray is a small white light released from the right hand, which is not powerful enough, but it can be fired continuously. As for the final Vertical Guillotine, it is even more powerful. You must know that the skills called Guillotine are forbidden techniques of Ace Ultraman, and their power is so terrifying that they are forbidden to be used by the Ultra Brothers. This shows how powerful this skill is. Although relying on armor to use, it is definitely not as strong as Ace Ultraman used out. After getting the method of crafting these weapons, he also equipped them all for Uindum. As for the first generation of Pacific Rim Mecha, Tango Wolf, he naturally created it in this section. Compared to the Ace Armor, although the Pacific Rim Mech is huge, it is much simpler to build. Everything is ready, and now it only takes a chance to sell this armor. Episode 83, Lot, let's go to that cafe and take a break. On the streets of New York, Gwen trotted ahead and turned to wave at him. After staying in the institute for 3 months in a row, Roth also specially took a few days to accompany several women to go shopping and watch movies. And today it's Gwen's turn. Then let's go. Putting the big bag of things in the car, Roth followed. Lot, do you know that our band won the first place in school some time ago? And Mary Jane, they said let me call you at the next party. Sitting in the elegant and quiet cafe, Gwen chattered nonstop, and it was clear that she was in a good mood today. After all, it's a rare date time. Sometimes Gwen wonders if Lot's boyfriend is too incomprehensible, letting so many girlfriends not go on dates, and actually soaking in the institute every day. Of course, this idea is only for a moment. With a boyfriend like Lot, I don't know how many people in the school envy it. But thinking of school, Gwen suddenly remembered a very unpleasant thing. That is, her classmate Harry Osborn actually wanted her serum, and after she refused, she didn't expect that this classmate actually kept asking her for trouble. Green Goblin? Lot was a little surprised, wasn't what Gwen said the original Green Goblin. It seems that Harry Osborn is the first generation of Green Goblins in the Marvel Universe, and as for Harry's father, it seems that he died due to a special genetic disease. You know the Green Goblin? Gwen asked curiously while sipping coffee. I've heard of it occasionally. Lot shrugged and said, but he shouldn't be your opponent. That guy is certainly not my opponent, but he has always been against me and sometimes involves other people. This is also what annoys Gwen the most, her strength is already stronger than the Green Goblin, not to mention that there is now the latest spider suit that Roth helped her create. But her only weakness is that she is too soft-hearted. Green Goblin said so also her classmate, and did not commit a crime. So she really can't get her hands on it. But if Green Goblin kept taking passers-by as hostages, she had to shoot. Roth knows Spider-Man very well, and it can be said that every generation of Spider-Man has a virgin heart. They fight with a will not to hurt anyone. But often it is only yourself who is hurt in this way. Gwen is much better under his influence, just a slight Madonna plot. That guy will become a criminal sooner or later, so if you don't bother to kill him, I can do it for you. Lot suggested with a smile. No, how can I say that he is also my classmate? Gwen shook her head immediately when she heard this. You're going to get hurt sooner or later. Roth shook his head helplessly. Forget it, next time I will teach him a good lesson. Gwen smiled with a look of nonchalance. Seeing this, Lot was a little helpless, but he didn't put the green goblin in his eyes, and the matter was left to Gwen to deal with herself. Jingle bells. Suddenly, the communicator on Lot's wrist rang, and then Alice got out of the watch. Sir, the monster has been found. Oh? Where is it? Gwen asked curiously. Alice waved her hand, followed by an extra satellite map beside her. The current location of the monster is on the western side of the Pacific Ocean, and it is expected that it will be an island country or a stick country. From the satellite monitoring, I saw a huge monster with a huge sickle head and a body like a beetle crawling on the surface of the sea. Its speed is very fast, and it is expected to be able to log in to the island country or stick country or dragon country in more than 10 minutes. However, judging from the route of the monster, it is currently heading due north, that is, the direction of the stick country. And this kaiju beast was exactly what Roth summoned yesterday. As for the purpose, it is naturally to promote the Pacific Rim Mecha. So this time he does not plan to drive you into him, but to drive the first generation of Pacific Rim Mecha, the Tango Wolf, to defeat the kaiju beast. At that time, as long as you give a signal to all countries, this mecha can be sold. Presumably, all countries should rush to buy door to door. Sir, Tony Stark called. At this time Alice reminded again. Lot was stunned, and then a playful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Presumably Tony's giant armor has also been built. Connect the phone. I think you must have received the news of the appearance of the monster. So your anti-monster suit is ready? Lot asked. Of course, my performance this time will definitely surprise you. Speaking of this, Tony's eyebrows suddenly danced. Okay, my side is ready to go. Is it? If you come to the night, then the monster will be solved by me. Tony was already on the road at this time, and when he heard that he had not yet set off, he was suddenly a little excited. He wanted to kill the monster before Lot arrived. If you can do it, then you don't have to run for nothing. Lot wasn't worried that the beast would be easily killed by Tony. You must know that the sickle head is a level 3 monster, 96 meters tall, weighing 2,700 tons, speed 6, strength 7, armor 7, poison. Compared to the demon witch, it is a level stronger. However, he also has to hurry up, no matter what, he can't miss this opportunity to promote the Pacific Rim Mecha. Didn't make much stopover. Roth and Gwen returned to Ultra, and since the Pacific Rim Mech is not equipped with PIM particles, they need to use a large transport aircraft. After all, this one is for sale, and loading PIM particles is not equivalent to waste. Fortunately, he also prepared in this regard. A moment later, several large transport planes carrying giant mechs with a height of 82 meters flew out of the Ultra Tower. This scene has also been discovered by many people. For a while, the internet suddenly became lively. Am I right? A large mech has just been transported away in the Ultra Technology building? You read that right. I also saw that the mech is so big, it takes several large transport aircraft to pull it. But when did Ultra Technology start developing mecha? You don't know yet. It is said that a large monster has appeared in the western direction of the Pacific Ocean, and I am afraid that this mech is going to deal with that monster. What? There are actually big monsters again? Hey! Shouldn't it be about Ultra Technology's possession of mecha now? The matter was further fermented on the internet, and everyone was very confused about when Ultra Technology developed the giant mecha. Meanwhile, 2 hours later, Roth finally came to the country of sticks with the Tango Wolf. That's right, in the end, the kaiju beast scythe head still landed in the country of sticks. This is a real relief for the island nation next door. After all, Tokyo has just suffered a devastating blow, with millions of casualties and countless economic losses, and they can no longer withstand a second toss. And the stick country found that the monster was coming straight towards them, and they immediately remembered it one by one like ants on a hot pot. Fortunately, Tony came to the stick country one step ahead with his anti-monster armor, which made the stick country high level breathe a sigh of relief. By the time Lot and them arrived, the battle between Tony and the scythehead, who had just landed, had just begun. Give me death, monster. I saw that Tony's anti-monster armor was similar to the previous 20 meters, but this time the anti-monster armor had a height of 50 meters. I saw his raised hands, followed by bows left and right, and palm cannons constantly bombarded the head of the sickle. The sickle head was defeated by the shockwave. However, this attack doesn't really hurt it. The head of the sickle head is the hardest place in its body, and it will not be injured so easily. Meanwhile, Lot's arrival also caught Tony's idea. What's that? Tony couldn't help but wonder as he looked at the huge armor hoisted by several large transport planes in the distance, which he had never seen before. Sir, the armor has the logo of Ultra Technology. Jarvis reminded. Is it his latest giant armor? Tony reacted immediately, but it was wrong to think about it, because Roth has quantum teleportation and PIM particles. How could a large transport aircraft be used to transport giant armor? This is unreasonable. And when he was so stunned, he was seized by the scythe head and charged with all his strength. Damn it. At the critical moment, Tony held the angle of the scythe head with both hands, but was pushed back by the huge force. Several buildings behind him were smashed by him. Seeing that he was about to lose his support, Roth decisively manipulated the Tango Wolf to fall from the air, and then helped Tony block the charge of the sickle head. Hey, thank you. It's not okay to fight so carelessly. Roth communicates directly with Tony. Is this your newly developed armor? Does it look as good as the one you had before? Tony glanced at the giant armor in front of him, and what interested him the most was the energy system on the chest of the giant armor. If he read correctly, it was the nuclear power system used. This is much worse than the previous armor. You are right, the Tango Wolf is indeed not as good as Uindum, but it is better than cheap and can be mass-produced. You mean? Hearing this, Tony was shocked in his heart and seemed to have some guesses. Read violent novels, just go to Felu Fiction Network. That's right, I'm going to sell this armor. Are you really going to do that? The guess in his heart came true, and Tony was still a little unbelievable. Anyway, it is impossible for him to sell the anti-monster armor. It's not a great technology anyway, and now that monsters are frequently appearing everywhere, don't you think you need more people to deal with it? This? You're right, Tony was a little shocked in his heart, but he didn't expect that Lot's purpose was actually this. Tony had never admired a person before, but this time he had to admire it. After creating the anti-monster armor, his first thought was to defeat the monster with his own strength. But it was never thought that countries would also have anti-monster armor, so that they could also have the ability to deal with monsters. But if there is enough giant armor, it will definitely be much easier to solve the monster. And those who lose their lives because of monsters can also be reduced a lot. This has saved countless people in disguise. However, Roth had already thought of this and took action to do so. At this moment, Tony's heart is complicated. Tony, don't be distracted, be careful. Seeing that the scythe had rushed over again, while Tony was in a daze, Roth could only remind him, and then slammed a punch on the side of the scythe head. The immense force almost overturned it. Thanks. Tony, who came back to his senses, thanked him, and then launched an attack on the monster, and the weapons such as the chest cannon and the energy blade all greeted the monster. And Roth's side also fired plasma cannons, as well as tracking missiles. Under the repeated bombardment of the two, the sickle head soon couldn't hold on and fell. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing the sickle head and earning 35,000 points. With the huge size of the sickle-headed monster disappearing, the battle was finally over. Because Tony came in time and intercepted the sickle head in the port, it did not cause much damage to the stick country. However, Raul also suffered thousands of casualties and lost billions of dollars. Of course, compared to the losses of the island country, the high level of the stick country can now snicker. And this battle also made everyone realize a new giant armor. So who developed this giant armor? And who drove it? This topic was directly rushed to the hot search of TikTok. After saying goodbye to Tony, Roth returns to the yacht mansion with the Tango Wolf. And put this Pacific Rim first-generation mech in a display hall in the yacht building. After learning the news that the newly appeared giant armor had returned to the yacht building, countless journalists, media, or business elites all frantically poured into a technology company. Roth didn't care about these reporters and media for the time being, but just set up a booth for them to watch the Pacific Rim mecha on their own. Lot, it's the call of the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Susan came to the Underground Research Institute and handed him the phone. Lot took the phone without any surprise, and he guessed that Nick Fury would definitely call. Hey! Director Fury, Mr. Roth, I want to know what exactly you took the initiative to expose the giant mecha for. Do you know that doing so will cause you a lot of trouble? Of course I know. Roth interrupted him directly, and then said with interest, Director Fury, what do you think I exposed this mech for? Nick Fury was stunned when he heard this, and after thinking about it, he couldn't figure out why. Does Mr. Lot want to be a superhero? It seems that Director Fury does not understand me. Roth sighed and shook his head with some disappointment. Is it intended to be sold? After saying this, Rao is that Nick Fury himself does not believe this reason. After all, where does OTT technology look like it is short of money? You guessed right, Chief Fury. Roth told him yes. This. After Nick Fury was stunned for a moment, he was suddenly surprised in his heart. Before, he also felt sorry that Roth did not join the Avengers. Why? And not because of the giant armor. Although Tony's technology is also very powerful, it is far worse than Roth. Didn't you see that every time a large monster appears, it was solved by Lot? If S.H.I.E.L.D. had giant mechs, it would be much easier and more convenient to handle various things, and there would be no need to be helpless after the monsters appeared. Mr. Roth, are you really going to sell the giant armor? Nick Fury confirmed it again. Of course, otherwise what's the use of me crafting this armor? I can't use it alone, and now that giant monsters appear frequently, this can no longer be solved by relying on my strength alone, so I plan to sell the technical drawings of building giant armor to various countries so that everyone can jointly resist the invasion of monsters. Lot's words were so impassioned that even he almost believed them. And Nick Fury was even more in awe of him, but he didn't expect that he could actually think of this layer, which was really his own underestimation of this genius scientist. Although Tony Stark has always called himself a superhero, it is much worse than the other party's approach. Although the other party has never called himself a superhero, this practice is no different from a superhero. Mr. Roth, I agree with your approach, I don't know if it's okay. Nope? Roth interrupted him directly. This? Why? Mr. Roth, we S.H.I.E.L.D. are willing to pay for it. It's not a matter of money, I'm sure you know about my attack some time ago, right? Episode 84, I do know a little about this, it's a military person, but haven't you already taken revenge? Nick Fury's words have a tentative meaning. In fact, the assassination of the White House 3 months ago did not catch the murderer. He was just guessing. No need to tempt, what colonel in the military was indeed killed by me, but there is someone else behind the scenes, he is your former S.H.I.E.L.D. director Alexander Pierce. Roth sneered. How is that possible? Nick Fury couldn't believe that this thing was actually done by his own teacher, knowing that he could become the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., thanks to the teacher's help. Don't believe it, Alexander Pierce actually has another layer of identity, that is, one of the leaders of Hydra, and now the entire S.H.I.E.L.D. can no longer be called S.H.I.E.L.D., it should be called Hydra. This? Hearing this, Nick Fury's eyes widened, and his heart was extremely shocked, but he did not fully believe Lot's words. Is that why you're reluctant to sell Mech to S.H.I.E.L.D.? Of course, isn't that enough? Lot asked rhetorically. I know, I will investigate this matter. Nick Fury said and hung up the phone. At this time, he is like an ant on a hot pot, where can he still manage the affairs of the Mecha? Although he did not fully believe Lot's words, this matter must be investigated. Thinking of this, he picked up the phone, Coulson come to my office. After a while, Coulson, who had died during the New York War, actually appeared in the office. Coulson, I need you to investigate next. Not to mention that Nick Fury is in a hurry to clean up the inner ghosts. The other side. Lot, those reporters and media have already started rioting, do you want to go out and deal with it? Skye hurriedly walked into the room. Well, it's almost time, let's go. Roth said and walked out of the room first, now it was time to spread the word about selling mechs. In the exhibition hall. On the 82-meter-tall Pacific Rim mecha standing on the domineering booth, every diamond horn on the armor was like a work of art, causing people to stop and watch. In fact, thousands of journalists and business elites in the audience have been enjoying it here for almost 2 hours. Now they only want to know the purpose of Ultra technology to show the mecha, and when Ultra technology has the ability to develop mecha. At this moment, 803, there was a sudden uproar in the crowd. It's out, it's out. Mr. Roth, may I ask if you made this armor yourself? Mr. Roth, may I ask if Ultra technology has been developing mecha? Mr. Roth, are you Superman? Mr. Roth, may I ask what your purpose is displaying the mech here? Looking at the reporters and media holding long guns and short cannons below, Roth raised his hand and gently pressed down, and the special aura made the people present involuntarily quiet. I know that you have a lot of doubts now, and I will answer them one by one for everyone, and now who I refer to, who can ask a question, of course, whether I answer back depends on my mood. Roth said, pointing to a female reporter in the audience who was not weak even in a group of tall men. Can you ask a question? The female reporter's face was full of joy, and she thought for a while and said, Mr. Roth, may I ask if you personally built this giant armor? When did it start to be built? Well, these are already 2 questions. Looking at the female reporter's continuous questioning, Roth interrupted her with a wave of his hand. First of all, this Ultra Mech, the Tango Wolf, was undoubtedly built by me, and there is no need to care when I started to build this. Okay, you can ask a question. After Roth answered, he pointed his finger at another male reporter. The reporter obviously wanted to ask something for a long time, and he did not hesitate to ask, Mr. Roth, what I want to ask is whether this mech can deal with giant monsters? This question is simply wasteful, and I feel sorry for you. Roth glanced at the male reporter with disdain, thinking that he could ask any questions? It's actually this problem. I guess I don't say this question, some of you already understand it. Roth looked at everyone present and continued, a giant monster with a height of more than 90 meters in the country of Styx appeared, and it was I who piloted this Ultra Mech and Iron Man to defeat that monster. Speaking of this, he didn't talk nonsense, and directly asked Alice to call out the video at that time. The next moment, on the big screen of the booth, the battle video of the previous 2 giant mechs and monsters was played. The tallest mech among them was the big guy that everyone present saw in front of their eyes. Because this incident has only passed a few hours, and it happened again on the side of the stick country, it is normal for some people not to know. Baff, and seeing that the armor in front of him had the upper hand in the head-on confrontation with the monster, and finally directly killed the monster, the people present immediately started talking. At this time, a relatively short female reporter jumped and raised her hand, afraid that others would not see him. Quiet. Lotske swept around until the room was quiet again, and then he looked at the female reporter and said, "Come and ask." "Thank you." The female reporter looked very excited, and she pushed the glasses on the bridge of her nose and said, "Mr. Roth, what I want to ask is whether the large mecha developed by your company will be sold." Hearing this question, Lot's eyes lit up, and the female reporter really asked for ideas. And hearing this question, the reporters and media present also all pricked up their ears and listened carefully. They wondered if the large mecha would be sold. "You asked this question very well. In fact, since the whole world began to appear monsters, I have been studying large armor, and the first one is to protect our home." Lot looked at everyone and continued with a heavy face, "But I alone can't protect the earth, so I will sell the large-scale mecha technology to various countries, so that all countries also have the power to fight monsters. That's the end of it." After thousands of people in the audience were stunned for a moment, an uproar suddenly broke out. What they guessed happened, and Ultra Technology really planned to sell large mechs. This news immediately shocked everyone present. You must know that this is a large mecha, and it is a weapon of war. Once sold, the problems caused are not so simple. However, they did not bother to ask the question, but first passed the news out. Roth didn't stop them either. Half an hour later, the news that Ultra Technology had created a large mecha and was about to be sold spread to all major countries instantly. After learning the news, major countries also sent people to the ugly country of New York. The military of the ugly country was faster, and almost after getting the news, Road came to the Ultra Technology building on behalf of the military. No way, the current relationship between the military and Ultra Technology is relatively tense. That's why he sent Rod, a relatively well-liked colonel, to negotiate the matter of Mecha. "Mr. Roth, I would like to ask a question." At this time, after experiencing the outbreak just now, everyone also quieted down one after another, and a female reporter raised her hand to inquire. Roth nodded to her. "This beautiful young lady, you can ask a question." "Thank you, Mr. Roth, I don't mind chatting with you and drinking tea later." The female reporter threw a wink at him, which was no longer implied but explicit. Of course, Roth had little interest in such a woman. "If you don't ask questions, you can give this opportunity to someone else." No, in fact, what I want to ask is that since Mr. Roth plans to sell the large mech, has he considered that it will cause a war because of this?" Hearing this question, the scene suddenly fell silent. Everyone wants to know the answer to this question. This problem is very easy to solve. The purchase of my Ultra Technology mecha must sign an agreement, that is, the mecha cannot be used in modern warfare, it can only be used to deal with monsters. If I find that someone uses the mecha for war, our Ultra Technology will take it back on my behalf. So Mr. Rod is already afraid of state organs? The female reporter asked another more pointed question. "You're no longer qualified to ask questions." Roth glanced at her and did not answer. After all, the question was somewhat sensitive. Okay, this is the end of this press conference. Since the sale of Mecha has been publicized, he is too lazy to face these bottomless reporters. Thinking of this, he turned around and prepared to leave. "Wait, it's me, I'm Road, you saved me last time." At this time, Road broke through the blockade of the security guard and ran towards Lot. Seeing this, a large number of security guards also chased after them, and let people run in, but they failed in their duties. When Roth turned his head and saw that it was Road, he immediately waved his hand, signaling the security guard to leave it alone. "Mr. Roth, I am negotiating with you on behalf of the military this time. Follow me, this is not the place to talk. Read violent novels, just go to Felu Fiction Network." Since Road purchased the mecha on behalf of the military of the ugly country, he naturally would not turn it away. After a while, the two came to a lounge. Roth casually sat on the sofa on the side, and then pointed to the opposite side and smiled. "Colonel Rhodes, sit, you're welcome." "Thank you." Road thanked him and then sat down. "Hey, you know what? I never knew that Steel Superman was you." As soon as he sat down, Rod's broken mouth began, and it seemed that he had indeed learned Lot's identity recently, and he had a fight with Tony because of this matter. After all, Tony had always known, but he hadn't told him. "Don't talk nonsense, just say what you mean. If it's not to buy a mecha, you may be able to go back to Tony now." Roth teased slightly. Then I'll say it bluntly, the military did send me to buy mecha. You say, how much does that mecha cost at the booth? Road didn't talk nonsense, this time with the support of the entire military, he didn't care how much it spent. Roth shook his head and put up a finger and smiled. "Not much, $100 billion US. and it's not the mecha at the booth, it's just a technical drawing. What? Rode was taken aback by his words. $100 billion knife is actually just a drawing. What kind of joke? If 100 billion can take away the mecha on the booth, it is within his psychological tolerance. Unexpectedly, it was just a technical drawing. This? Isn't this too? As I said, I will only provide technical drawings, and nothing else. Of course, you can also ask me as a technical guide to help you build giant mechs, but this is an additional charge. If you want to take away the mecha directly for 100 billion, it is impossible. He is not that stupid. When Rode heard this, his face was like constipation, and he didn't know what to do, and his expression. I have to discuss this with the military, you see? Go, I'll wait here for half an hour, and I'll leave in half an hour, and you know I'm busy right now. After that, he stood up and took out a bottle of red wine from the wine cabinet behind him and poured himself a glass. Seeing this, Rode turned and left the room, and then called the military. A moment later, Rode returned to the room. How? Is there an answer? Roth lay comfortably on the sofa, shaking the red wine glass in his hand with one hand. The military has already agreed to buy technical drawings for 100 billion, but you have to make sure that the mecha can be successfully built. Rhodes voiced the military demands. I can't guarantee this, my technical drawings are completely fine, but if your scientists can't build them, you can't blame me, right? Roth shrugged. This? Rode thought for a moment and then said, then on behalf of the military, I invite you as a technical advisor. No problem, but my appearance fee is a little expensive, $10 million a month, and I have to add money after a month, you know I'm very busy. No problem, I agree to your request on behalf of the military. 100 billion agreed, this 10 million is nothing, Rode decisively agreed. When you transfer the money to the Ultra Technology account, I will pass the technical drawings of the mecha to the military, and if it's okay, I have other things to be busy with, so I won't send it. Lot said as he stood up and prepared to leave. Rode nodded, no problem, I will notify the military to transfer the money to the account of our company as soon as possible. The military is also very relieved about the money. Anyway, OTT Technology is in New York, and it can't run. Then as soon as possible. By the way, you should have heard me say something about the agreement before. This, of course I heard it, so you must also sign this agreement, otherwise I will not sell it even if it is more money. Roth folded his hands to his chest. Well, this agreement our military agreed to sign. Rode agreed without any hesitation, apparently he had just reported the agreement to the military, and the military agreed to the agreement. At this time, Sky outside the door took the agreement contract. Sign it quickly. Lot urged. Rode looked at the agreement contract, except for the transaction, that is, the mecha could not be used in this aspect of the war. After making sure that there was no problem, he decisively signed the agreement. Happy cooperation. It was easily negotiated into a business of 100 billion US, and Roth was in a good mood. Happy cooperation. Rode stood up and shook his hand, then turned and left the room. After seeing him leave, Sky sighed. It's really easy to make money like this. $100 billion was an astronomical amount for Sky, but she didn't expect it to be negotiated in just half an hour, which always made her feel a little unreal. Haha, this is just the beginning. Roth shook his head somewhat amusedly. He wasn't wrong. Half an hour later, people from Ghana, Russia, Mexico, and other cities closest to the ugly country came to discuss the mecha. It can be seen that the major powers attach great importance to mecha. It is no exaggeration to say that mecha is another nuclear weapon that deters countries. You can do without, but you can't do without. However, Roth did not have time to talk to them in detail one by one, so he directly arranged all the people who came to negotiate in the hotel. A week later, I was discussing the mecha. Although the diplomats of the major powers are very dissatisfied with this arrangement, they are customers after all. Haven't you heard that the customer is God? But this is not easy to do with Roth, who does not restrict the freedom of these diplomats. If you don't want to buy it, some people buy it. Episode 85, Lot, the diplomats over there in the Dragon Kingdom have been clamoring to see you. In the Underground Research Institute, Sky hurriedly ran to pass the message. Didn't I say you would arrange them to the hotel? Roth said while operating on the virtual screen. But when they clamored to see you, I couldn't help it. Sky looked helpless. Could it be that they can still break in? Roth finally put down his work and turned to look at her. They didn't break in, but they are people from the Shaw Group. Who is the Shaw Group? It's not anyone, they are the agents of Mobile in the Dragon Kingdom, and Sister Susan is a little difficult to handle this matter, so I asked me to come and inform you. So that's the case, then you can't be too faceless. Lot touched the Chinbie Road. The sales volume of OTT smartphones in the Dragon Kingdom has reached a staggering 30%, so you have to give this face. Sky couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when she heard this. Let's go, let's see how urgent it is for you, this is not okay. Lot patted her shoulder with some amusement. Sky rolled her eyes helplessly, she was just a school dropout who had not been involved in the world, and where had she gone through this battle? It's nice to have such a performance, okay. In the president's office. Unlike what Roth imagined, I saw a woman with black hair and black lips talking and laughing with Susan. Jing Tian? Roth was a little stunned, isn't this woman the domineering female president of the Shaw Group in Pacific Rim? By the way, Sky just said that the other party is someone from the Shaw Group. That's a coincidence. Lot, you're here. Seeing him come in, Susan introduced, this is Saiwen, president of the Shaw Group, and the mobile phone can be popular in the Dragon Kingdom, also because of Miss Xiao's efforts. Hello Miss Xiao. Roth took the initiative to step forward and extend his hand. Hello, I have long heard of Mr. Roth's name as a genius scientist, and today it is really extraordinary at first sight. Saiwen shook his hand and looked at him with interest. What is she talking about? Susan asked Sky in a low voice. Yes, Chinese, probably means to say hello. Sky explained simply. That's what it means. Susan nodded thoughtfully. I'm sorry, I'm a little excited to see Mr. Lot, who is also from the Dragon Kingdom. Saiwen showed a slightly apologetic smile. It's okay, Miss Xiao has anything to say, if you want to talk about buying Mecha, please wait patiently for a week, after a week I will discuss with everyone about the sale of Mecha. Roth went straight to the point, because the last thing he liked was to pull the relationship for everything. In the Dragon Country, relations are more important than strength, which he has deeply experienced in his previous life, and he is also extremely disgusted. Saiwen apologized, I'm sorry Mr. Roth, I really want to talk to you about buying Mecha in advance, and for this I am willing to pay 10% more money to buy Mecha. Luo Ti was a little surprised when he heard this. In order to be able to build the Mecha in advance, the Shaw Group really put in the blood, and was actually willing to pay 10% more. You know, this 10% is not a small amount. Let me ask first, can the Shaw Group represent the Dragon Kingdom? Of course, our Shaw Group is a national enterprise. Saiwen nodded. So that's the case, okay, since Miss Xiao said so, I naturally won't refuse. Roth said and looked at Sky on the side, give the contract to Miss Xiao. Sky nodded, and then handed a document in her arms to Saiwen. Saiwen couldn't wait to take a look. Is a $100 billion knife just a technical drawing? Luo Ti nodded, that's right, Miss Xiao, $100 billion is only the technical drawings of the mecha, but I guarantee that you can create the same mecha, and you can also hire me as a technical consultant, this is cheaper, only 10 million a month. Saiwen thought for a moment with a calm face when she heard this, I want to ask, is it also this price to sell to others? Of course, the military of the ugly country has already signed a contract before you, I think it won't be long before they can start building mecha. Lot smiled. This is clearly his radical method. Sure enough, Saiwen's face suddenly changed when she heard this, okay, I agree. As soon as she heard that the military of the ugly country had signed the contract, she didn't think much about it, and signed the contract directly. And also signed more employment contracts. After all, if you take this technical drawing back, it is almost impossible to build a mecha at once. Therefore, it is necessary to hire Roth, the inventor, to create a mecha in the shortest possible time. Then Miss Xiao, happy cooperation. Lot smiled and stretched out his hand again. Happy cooperation. Saiwen also stretched out her hand, and at the same time she looked at Lot seriously, and couldn't help sighing in her heart. It is really a pity that such a genius scientist is not in the country. Soon Saiwen returned to China with the contract, and she had to get the contract back as soon as possible, and then put the money into the account about technology company. In any case, it cannot lag behind the ugly country. That's what she thinks. Lot, the military of the ugly country has already sent money to the company's account. At this time, Susan exclaimed. That's pretty fast. Roth was not too surprised. Alice, send all the technical drawings of the Tango Wolf to the military. Yes sir. By the way, sir, there is a phone call from Colonel Rhodes, do you want to answer it? Of course. Roth nodded. When Alice heard this, she directly displayed the video call on the virtual screen in front of her. Hey man, you've already received the money, have you? Rhodes had just received news that the military had completed the payment, so he asked this question. That's right, I have sent all the technical drawings related to the mecha to the military. If you don't understand anything, you can call me for consultation, after all, I have already received the money from the consultant. That's good. That's good. Rhodes was afraid that the military researchers would not be able to understand the technical drawings of the mecha, and now he was much more relieved with this sentence. In fact, the Pacific Rim mecha is relatively very simple, and it can be made with the knowledge of most scientists now. The only thing that has some trouble is the nuclear power system. However, just when Roth thought that the military building mecha would not bother him too much, he did not expect that the next day Road called and said that he was in trouble. Helplessly, he can only run, who let him collect the money. At the same time, the Dragon Kingdom side also transferred $11 billion plus $10 million in consulting fees to the account of Ott Company. In just 2 days, he made more than $200 billion. This is simply unparalleled. However, this also made Roth tired of rushing. After all, the employment fee was charged, and the mecha construction on the side of the Dragon Kingdom could not be ignored. Of course, the most important thing is that he also wants to help countries complete the construction of mecha as soon as possible. In particular, the island countries of the stick countries are Pacific countries. Because if the wormhole is summoned at that time, it is very likely to be in the Pacific Ocean. Therefore, it is very necessary for several countries close to the Pacific Ocean to build mecha. A week later, Roth met with diplomats or important military leaders from various countries on time. This does not look at the unknown, look at the frightened. Rao did not expect that the number of people who came to buy mecha this time actually reached more than 50. Among them are not only the militaries of various countries, but also some chaebol families. He thought about it, who to sell to is not selling. Even if he does not sell, there will be countries that have already bought to sell to these chaebols, so he directly received all the orders. However, when the news came out that 100 billion was just buying drawings, half of them immediately chose to leave directly. Roth didn't care about that either. Those who stay are those with purchasing power. Another week passed, and he finally signed contracts with all the buyers. In these 2 weeks, he made $3 trillion, which is already the annual GDP income of some countries. Today's OTT technology can already be described as a rich and rival country. Of course, these are just numbers for Roth. He then worked as a technical advisor to 30 countries, but he was busy. 2 months later, Roth, who had just flown back to New York to rest, suddenly received a call from Nick Fury. "How is Commissioner Fury doing? Speaking of which, since the last time he spoiled the Hydra wave, he really didn't care much about S.H.I.E.L.D. Oops. Oh? Did Hydra do anything to S.H.I.E.L.D.? Roth is not unsurprised. After all, after spoiling the fact that Hydra is S.H.I.E.L.D., according to Nick Fury's approach, it will definitely be investigated. And Alexander Pierce, in order not to expose the secrets of Hydra, will definitely take the lead. I just don't know what the actual situation is now. You're right, S.H.I.E.L.D. is now completely controlled by Hydra, and even I have been hunted down. Similar to the plot of Team America 2 that Roth knows, Nick Fury still finds Bucky, the Winter Soldier sent by Alexander Pierce, to intercept. Nick Fury then borrowed suspended animation and hid in a secret base unknown to S.H.I.E.L.D. So you want me to help you? The corners of Lot's mouth rose slightly, revealing a playful smile. Unexpectedly, at this moment, Nick Fury was actually not looking for Tony's help, but looking for himself. After a moment of silence, Nick Fury said, "Tony himself is in trouble now, and now I can only trust you. How do you want me to help you?" Roth thought about it or agreed. After all, this is a good opportunity to get rid of Alexander Pierce, the leader of the Hydra. Read violent novels, just go to Felu Fiction Network. After letting that guy live so long, it's time to finish him off. Captain and Romanov, they were blocked by Hydra's people. I hope you can help them. No problem. This little thing Roth naturally will not refuse. After hanging up, Alice, lock the location of Steve and Black Widow immediately. Yes sir, the target is in Virginia, 600 kilometers away. I hope they can make it up. After learning the location of Team America and Black Widow, Roth quickly put on Saiwen Armor and went into stealth mode, and then quickly rushed towards Virginia. Zero ask for flowers. Half an hour later. Sir, they're in the 2300 Virginia roadblock. Following Alice's instructions, Roth soon found Team America and Natasha, as well as the Falcon. However, it seems that their situation is not good. Hydra's people directly intercepted the three of them in the downtown area, and for a while, gunshots and explosions resounded throughout the neighborhood. Need help? Lot's slightly teasing voice sounded in the three-person headset. Lot? Natasha was the first to react. Who is he? Falcon is somewhat unfamiliar with the name. The American team did not say anything, because he could not say anything now, and could only flee under the pursuit of the Winter Soldier. Seeing this, Roth didn't say nonsense, and directly used quantum teleportation to send 2 multi-purpose rifles, and then shot at the people of Hydra below. Bang bang. The sudden blow made Hydra's people panic directly. However, no matter where they hid, they could not escape the bullets fired from the sky. Under the strafing of 2 multi-purpose rifles, dozens of Hydra soldiers only held out for tens of seconds before being killed. This scene directly made the whole Falcon look stupid. And Natasha couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when she saw this. However, just when several people were relaxing, suddenly a car suddenly tumbled and smashed towards several people. Seeing this move, the US team raised its shield to block the front. Bang! Just as the American team was about to withstand the huge force, he found the car stopped in front of him. He looked suspiciously at the sunken roof of the car, where there seemed to be a pair of arms supporting it. Roth. Although she couldn't see him in stealth, Natasha knew that he was coming. Director Fury asked me to take you back. What? The chief is still alive? Hearing his words, the three of them were a little surprised. After all, they had all been thinking that Nick Fury had died. Of course, how could he die so easily as the king of agents? Saying that, Roth threw the car aside, looked at Bucky the Winter Soldier who was slowly walking ahead, and looked at the American team on the side. This one really can be separated from anyone. He didn't kill Bucky in the first place, because he wondered if the American team would continue to hide the truth about his parents' deaths from Tony this time, and whether it would still double standard. Thinking of this, he raised his right arm, followed by the palm cannon charge. Rumble. The powerful energy impact instantly blasted Bucky out. However, this also happened to allow the American team to see the appearance of the Winter Soldier mask after being beaten. Bucky? It's time for us to go. Lott didn't bother to care about Steve's business, turned around and prepared to leave. Captain, let's go. Seeing that the police surrounded him, Natasha had to forcibly pull him away. Moments later, the four of them sat in the car where Agent Hill had come to pick them up. How did you know I was here? Hill had indeed received an order from Nick Fury to pick up a few of them. Unexpectedly, they were found by the four of them halfway. Hearing this, Natasha and Falcon Sam looked at Roth, who had removed his armor. Roth shrugged and smiled. You should believe in the power of technology. Listening to him say this, several people immediately understood. Speaking of which, how come you are a big busy person free to help us? Natasha still didn't understand. It stands to reason that Roth should be busy dealing with the mecha matter now. Speaking of which, you still don't know that I told Director Fury about Hydra. Roth chuckled. Hearing this, Natasha and Team America looked at each other. They didn't know this stubble at all. We have a common enemy, that is, the leader of the Hydra, Alexander Pierce. Of course, I can solve him without helping you. I see, thank you. Natasha thanked him, and as for his last words, she was just Sundara. After all, Tony often does such arrogant things. But she knew that Tony cherished the team very much. Along the way, several people chatted first. However, the American team on the side rarely spoke, perhaps thinking about Bucky the Winter Soldier, or simply disliking Lott. Roth naturally didn't have the idea of a hot face against a cold ass. An hour later, the crowd stopped in front of an abandoned bomb shelter that had been used as a makeshift base. Entering the temporary base, several people saw Nick Fury lying on the hospital bed again. Here it comes. Thanks a lot. The latter sentence was clearly addressed to Roth. I think you'd better explain it to them. Nick Fury sighed, spinal injury, broken sternum, crushed collarbone, liver perforation, plus a deadly headache. Don't forget lung atrophy. The doctor on the side reminded. Yes, this can't be forgotten, and it's all good otherwise. Nick Fury forced a smile. Episode 86, but they disemboweled you and your heart stopped? Natasha was still a little puzzled, knowing that she was physically present when she had the operation. Tetrodotoxin B can lower the heartbeat to less than a minute. Nick Fury explained simply. Why secrecy? Why not tell us? Steve frowned, somewhat incomprehensible to what he was doing. Obviously, if Director Fury doesn't die once, he is really dead. Roth laughed with a slightly mocking meaning. Dead people don't die again, and I don't know who else to believe. Nick Fury sighed helplessly. A moment later. The group arrived in a conference room. Nick Fury picked up the photo of Alexander Pierce and sighed, I should have known, this man refused to accept the Nobel Peace Prize. I think we have to find a way to stop the launch of the Skycarrier now. Natasha interrupted him. No way, the council shouldn't answer my call. Nick Fury shook his head helplessly. After the Sky aircraft carrier flies to 3,000 feet, it will use the InSight satellite triangulation and turn it into a weapon of destruction. Hill displayed the structural diagram of the Skycarrier on the computer. We must replace the positioning module of the Skycarrier with our own. Nick Fury explained. And the 3 Sky aircraft carriers must be replaced at the same time, otherwise even if one Sky aircraft carrier is operating normally, it will cause countless casualties. Hill added. Assuming that the Skycarrier is full of Hydra people, we must find a way to break through them. Just as Nick Fury was talking about the next plan, he was bluntly interrupted by Steve. We don't have to save anything, Nick, we have to destroy not only the Skycarrier, but also S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D. has nothing to do with this matter. 153-inch, Nick Fury argued. That's how you gave me the task, S.H.I.E.L.D. has been infiltrated by Hydra, this is what you said yourself. Steve still sees this as his own. I approve. At this time, Lott's voice attracted everyone's idea. Director Fury, remember what I said? Today's shield is already a hydra, can't be saved, it's better to destroy it directly, this kind of thing I'm best at, just leave it to me. Roth patted his chest. The destruction of 3 aircraft carriers is simply a no-brainer for him. Where to use replacement chips or something, that would be too troublesome. Anyway, didn't the 3 sky carriers be destroyed in the end? Nope. However, as soon as he finished saying this, Steve was the first to stand up against it. Huh? Isn't it the captain who destroyed the sky aircraft carrier yourself? I thought we finally had a bit of a tacit understanding between us. Lot clasped his hands to his chest and narrowed his eyes. I mean, blowing up directly will inevitably involve ordinary people. It's you who have a selfish heart, Captain. Lot said with a smile. In fact, he guessed why Steve would object, because Bucky might go on the sky carrier. We can complete this task without you. Steve simply refused his help. So you're willing to let them accompany you on your adventures, and they will die because of you. Lot looked at Natasha and Falcon on the side. Hearing this, Steve frowned and looked at him. I don't like you very much, is it? For what? Lot looked at him with interest, wondering why he didn't like him. It seems that the two do not have too much intersection. Although he had spoken faintly sarcastically to the other party before. You are not at all like what they say, you are very selfish and arrogant, you like to be in the limelight, you do not take responsibility corresponding to ability, what are you without that armor? You're nothing. Steve. Captain. Hearing Steve's merciless and disparaging words, Nick Fury and Natasha hurriedly stopped it. Let's not say whether Lot is that kind of person. Even then, that should not be contradictory at this time. Moreover, both of them knew very well about Lot's behavior style, and they also knew everything he did for the world. But Roth was not angry at all when he heard this, and even wanted to laugh a little. You say I'm selfish and arrogant and like to be in the limelight? But I never announced that I was a superhero. So what's the show? You say I don't have responsibilities corresponding to my abilities? It seems that you know about that. I deliberately did not prevent the attack of the corrupting monster on Rhode Island, but you should not know that I was already indicted by the military at that time. Also, what do you mean that I don't have that armor? I remember you said this to Tony too. Lot said and came to Steve. His 1.82 figure was even taller than Steve. Then let me tell you, does the genius scientist who leads the development of human science and technology count? Is it counted to drive the economic development of various countries? And even if I don't use that armor, I can easily clean you up. Before the words fell, he punched Steve in the face. Bang! The huge force instantly blasted the caught-off-guard Steve out for several meters and smashed heavily on the wall. Everyone was also taken aback by his actions, and by the time they reacted, Steve was already lying in the corner and moaning in pain. The power of Lot's punch is really not small, and Steve, who has no shield defense, is already good if he resists this punch without being unconscious on the spot. He always remembered this saying, the end of the day first kill the virgin. Although it is not the end now, with Steve, the virgin, present, he always feels unhappy. It's much more comfortable now. He even took out his phone and took a picture and sent it to Tony. Tony also quickly replied. This is the captain? Who did this to you? Tony was also a little shocked to see the captain being beaten so badly. Who else? I did it. Well done, I've wanted to do this for a long time, haha. Tony couldn't help but laugh when he learned that it was him. Just as the two of them were exchanging messages and chatting vigorously, Natasha and Falcon on the side had already carried Steve to the hospital bed. It's just that Steve still didn't resist and fainted directly. Seeing Nick Fury's sad face, Roth smiled and said, Director Fury, you can leave this matter to me with confidence. His idea was to capture Alexander Pierce and threaten him to order all Hydra members into the sky carrier. At that time, you can catch it all. Nick Fury was a little helpless when he saw this, but now he can only believe him. A moment later, both Roth and Natasha set off. As for Falcon, he did not participate in this mission, he was originally there to help Steve. Now that Steve can't go out on a mission, then naturally there is no need for him to help. In this regard, Roth was not surprised. If it were not for the person who was still leading the way, he would not even want to bring Natasha. Good thing you brought me. In front of S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters, Natasha smiled, and then led him to the place where Alexander Pierce was. Along the way, Roth also admired her excellent sneaking skills. As for himself, he turned on the stealth mode of Severn's armor and swaggered behind her. At this time, Alexander Pierce was meeting with various dignitaries. Are you going to do that? Natasha looked at the empty space beside her. Directly control everyone inside. Roth thought about it and decided to use the simplest method of violence. Natasha was a little puzzled when she heard this, but you are only alone? One person is enough. After that, Roth pushed the door and walked in. Pierce, who was talking to dignitaries from various countries, was the first to turn back and looked suspiciously at the empty doorway. Then, in full view, the door closed again. Don't worry, it may just be that there is some minor problem with that door. Pierce's face was a little unbearable, and he could only pretend not to care in the face of important officials from various countries. But the next moment, his whole person was lifted up from the back collar. Hey, is it really just a small problem? Mr. Pierce? Roth disarmed the stealth system and looked at him with a smile. You're Steel Superman? Shocked, Pierce turned his head and suddenly his pupils shrank. Oh, you still recognize me, did you forget about assassinating me during this time? Roth threw Pierce on the ground and laughed. Kill him for me, kill him. After escaping, Pierce immediately shouted orders to the people around Hydra, but no one listened to him. Everyone stood still. Natasha outside the door frowned when she saw this. What kind of ability is this? Natasha, you can come in, I already have everyone under control. Lot turned to Natasha outside the door. Natasha walked in cautiously when she heard this, and she looked at the motionless agents beside her and saw that they were not dead. Bang bang. At this moment, Pierce found the opportunity to raise his pistol and fire several shots at Roth. Read violent novels, just go to Felu Fiction Network. However, the pistol bullet hit Saiwen's armor like a tickle. What did you do to them? Natasha unloaded the gun from Pierce's hand and asked. It's just a thought. Roth explained simply. Okay, what now? Natasha said a little helplessly. It depends on whether Mr. Pierce is worthy of cooperation. Roth looked at Alexander Pierce lying on the ground with interest. Your plot will not succeed. Pierce is worthy of being the leader of the Hydra, and even in the face of this situation, he is still not panicked at all. You are the biggest conspiracy. Natasha replied. Cooperate with Mr. Pierce, send all of you Hydra people to the Sky Carrier. What do you want to do? Pierce was shocked in his heart and looked at him in disbelief. Lot, I'm afraid it won't be long before the situation here is discovered. 0, Natasha reminded after a little bit of manipulation on the computer beside her. Alright. Roth wanted to continue teasing Pierce, but since time was pressing, he didn't waste any time. Mr. Pierce, send all your people to the Sky Carrier. At the same time as the words fell, Ultraman directly controlled Pierce's brain. This is also a method of using ultra-mental power that he has just developed, and after controlling the opponent's brain, he can order the other party to do anything. Sure enough, after being stunned for a second, Pierce picked up the communicator and notified all the Hydra members. This scene directly dumbfounded Natasha. She has always been just a scientist, just like Tony. But I didn't expect that the other party would actually have this ability. Everything went very well after Pierce gave the order. The Hydra members who remained at S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters all boarded the Sky Carrier, and then the Sky Carrier successfully took off. Lot, how are you going to destroy these 3 Sky Carriers? Seeing the 3 Sky Carriers flying higher and higher, Natasha was a little puzzled that he was going to do this next. Just watch the show. The corners of Lot's mouth rose slightly. Alice, start the satellite chain and destroy those 3 Sky aircraft carriers. By the way, don't leave too much wreckage, otherwise it will not be good to hit the flowers and plants. Okay sir, the satellite chain is being started. Alice's voice came from the watch. At the same time, at an altitude of 20,000 meters above the Earth, dozens of satellites turned their direction at the same time, and then exposed metal guns aimed at the direction of the Sky Carrier below. There was no sound, and I saw dozens of pillars of light shooting. In the next second, 3 Sky Carriers were hit. Thundered. In the blink of an eye, the 3 Sky aircraft carriers were shot through by the pillar of light, followed by a violent explosion. But that's not the end of it. Alice remembered Lot's order to completely destroy the 3 Sky Carriers. So dozens of pillars of light shot towards the wreckage of the Sky Mothership. It was just a few rounds of attacks, and the Sky Carrier was destroyed. Only a few wrecks fell from the sky at a height of 10,000 meters. After the explosion in the sky, Natasha came to the window to look up, but she couldn't see the picture at a height of 10,000 meters. All that can be seen is some of the debris falling. How the hell did you do that? Recovering from her shock, Natasha looked at Lot. Satellite weapons are just that, it's not worth mentioning. He didn't hide it, anyway, since they have been used, they will be discovered sooner or later. When Natasha heard this, her heart suddenly shook, because she remembered that Ultra technology seemed to have never stopped launching satellites recently. I'm afraid there are hundreds of satellites in the sky by now, right? If all these satellites were equipped with weapons to strike the ground. Thinking of this, Natasha shuddered a little. This feeling was like the sword of Damocles hanging above her head, which could kill her at any time. Don't worry, I'm not Hydra. Lot patted her shoulder and shook his head somewhat amusedly. Well, Mr. Pierce, it's time to send you on your way. 3.1. Wait, please give him to me if you can. Natasha saw that he was going to make a move on Pierce, and quickly stopped him. Nope. Roth decisively shook his head and refused, and then a palm cannon directly smashed Pierce's entire body. The scene was a bit bloody though. But since he is an enemy, then he will naturally not be merciful. Give it to Nick Fury? What if he escapes? Natasha was also a little helpless when she saw this, but she didn't say anything. Okay, I'll leave the rest to you. Since Alexander Pierce has already taken out, then there is nothing for him to do next. It's better to go back and take a good rest. After all, he hasn't stopped for a moment in the past 2 months, and the world is running everywhere. The good news is that after these 2 months, the mecha construction of major powers is also in full swing. It is estimated that it will not be long before it enters the testing phase. In particular, the Ugly Country and the Dragon Country have now been built, and the progress is far beyond that of other countries. At the same time, he also established a Mecha Supervision Association during this time, the purpose of which is to supervise the mecha of various countries from abuse. Lot thought about it, since the mecha of the military of the Ugly Country and the Dragon Country can already be put into use, plus himself and Tony, so that he has 4 mecha. And the Tango Wolf can also be given to Gwen or Susan to drive. This gives you the power of 5 mechs. I am afraid that it is not safe to summon wormholes rashly. But it would definitely be no problem to summon 2 kaiju beasts alone to come out and practice their hands. Thinking of this, he decisively and randomly summoned 2 kaiju beasts named Shanlan. The strength of the kaiju beasts in the system is strong and weak, and most of them have not appeared in the Pacific Rim. After all, there are just a few kaiju beasts in the movie. And this time, the kaiju beast he summoned was a 3rd level strength. Episode 87, it is not weak or strong. It's certainly not easy to deal with. And drivers are also a problem. On his side, Gwen and Susan are different from ordinary people, and driving alone can definitely do. But the military of the Ugly Country and the Dragon Country have a big problem, although they have already started training drivers 2 months in advance. However, it is difficult to say whether you can fly a mecha until now. Of course, you can find out if it works or not. Lot, do you have time tonight? Just returned to the Ott mansion, but I didn't expect that Gwen was already waiting here. Of course there is time, so do you want to have dinner with me? Lot smiled and wrapped his arms around her waist, lowering his head to kiss her red lips. Of course, it's okay to have dinner together, but my dad invited you to his house tonight. Gwen put her backhand around his neck and laughed. Guest? Roth was a little surprised, but he didn't expect that his old man actually took the initiative to invite him. How? Is it difficult? Seeing that he didn't speak, Gwen suddenly pouted a little unhappy. Of course not, it's just a little strange, but the first time I go to your house, I have to think about what gift to bring. Although the rules are different from those of the Dragon Kingdom, the first visit gift cannot be less, and he has to prepare well. Don't bother so much, as long as you go back with me. Seeing that he attached so much importance to this matter, Gwen leaned on his shoulder very happily. That's not going to work. Roth shook his head, taking advantage of the fact that it was still early, he had to prepare. Gwen saw him turn around and go busy, and shrugged a little helplessly. At dusk, Roth eventually chose to drive to Gwen's house. After all, it is the first visit, and if you fly a private jet or something, it is too ostentatious, so it is better to drive. But Rao is so, when the global limited edition Rolls-Royce stopped at Gwen's doorstep, it still attracted the attention of many people. Gwen, what if I'm a little nervous? Seeing that he was about to see the old man, Rao and Roth were a little nervous. Gwen hugged his cheeks a little amusedly, and then gave him a deep kiss. Don't be nervous now. Roth's body stiffened a little, because the door next to him had opened 10 at some point, and the old man George Stacy was watching the two at the door. It was Gwen who was the first to react. She put her arm around George and smiled. Dad, Lot, you have already seen it, so I won't introduce it. Well, hello Uncle George. Roth stepped forward and handed over the gift in his hand. George stared at him for a moment before accepting the gift. Welcome. Can I open it? Of course. Unexpectedly, George's attitude towards him was not bad. This also made him breathe a sigh of relief. Enter the living room. Wow, it's a watch, it shouldn't look cheap. George opened the gift and looked at it, and found that it was a watch with a very technological shape, and he knew that it was worth a lot at a glance. It's just a do-it-yourself gadget, I hope Uncle George doesn't dislike it. Lot smiled slightly. Is it? I don't think it's a gadget. George, as the police chief, his vision is naturally not bad, plus the identity of the other party, the value of this watch and his estimation are probably only high. Dad, don't care, I'll help you put it on. Gwen said and brought the watch to George. Because she knows how powerful this watch is made of nanometal. Not only can they form shields at critical moments to block damage, such as bullets, but these nanometals also possess the ability to heal. Even during critical periods, you can use quantum teleportation to summon armor to protect yourself. This shows how attentive Roth was to this visit. Very good. George glanced at his new watch and nodded in satisfaction, then beckoned him to sit down and prepare for dinner. While eating and chatting, George found that the young man in front of him did not have the bad problems of those rich people, but was very talkative and knowledgeable. After a meal, George was very satisfied with the future son-in-law. While Gwen went to the kitchen to finish washing, George called him to the balcony. Lot, I hope you must protect Gwen in the days to come, you know that she is my only daughter, I love her. Don't worry, I will definitely protect her. After only a moment's thought, Roth understood that the old man must have known about Gwen and his identity. That's why such a request was made. No wonder I haven't heard Gwen complain lately about George grabbing her. That's good. George wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes, then turned and returned to the house. Lot, what did Dad say to you? After Gwen came out of the kitchen, she only felt that George was a little strange, so she came over and asked him. It's nothing, it's just that your father has discovered the identity of you and me, and he has completely handed you over to me. Lot said as he put his arm around her waist and laughed. Discovered? Gwen was shocked in her heart, she didn't expect that her Spider-Man's identity had been hidden for so long and her father was actually discovered. Don't be too surprised, your father is the police chief, how can you not find out after getting along for so long? So that's also. Gwen was a little helpless. At least your father didn't debunk you, did he? Roth said with some amusement. So Dad supports me, right? Of course, you're a superhero after all. Lot said and lowered his head, wanting to give Gwen a deep kiss. However, at this moment, Alice's figure suddenly came out of the watch. Sir, find the monster track. Roth was a little helpless. Monsters again? Gwen's face suddenly became serious. Where is the monster now? In the Gulf of Alaska, 100 nautical miles from the coast. Actually at this time. Roth had a headache, after all, this was the first time he had come to Gwen's house, and I was afraid it would be a little bad to leave now. We have to get there as soon as possible. Gwen's tone was very firm. But. At this moment, George coughed twice in the room, and it was clear that he had heard the two of them. Oops, found out by my father. Gwen had a little headache, but he didn't expect that the words between them were actually discovered by his father, which was not easy to do. Go ahead, but be careful with your own safety. George is not a person who does not know how to be flexible, and he also understands very well how destructive monsters are. One more second of delay now could kill countless people. That. Dad, here we go. Gwen didn't expect that his father, who wanted to be stricter, would be so easy to talk to this time. Hurry up and go. George waved his hand without looking back. Then let's go. Gwen said and changed into the spider suit, although she may not be able to help much, but she still has to go. Seeing this, Roth did not refuse, after putting on Saiwen Armor. The two disappeared directly from the balcony into the sky. Return to the Ott mansion. Sir, another monster has been found. What? Two monsters actually appeared this time? Gwen was a little surprised to hear this. That's right, it's just that one is in the Gulf of Alaska and the other is in the Bay of Bengal, less than 80 nautical miles from the coast. After Alice answered, the high-definition photos taken by the satellite were displayed on the virtual screen. I saw that the appearance of the two monsters was not much different, and the body size was somewhat similar to the snapping turtle, but it was more hideous, and the back was like carrying a volcano and kept emitting red light. It's no wonder it's called Yamera. Its body length is about 70 meters, which is much taller than that of the demon witch. From the appearance, you can know that this is a monster with a very perverted defense. Two monsters appeared at once, what should I do now? Gwen looked solemnly at Lot. Notify Tony first. Roth intends to let Tony and the dangerous wanderers of the ugly military deal with the monster in the Gulf of Alaska. He travels to the Bay of Bengal to destroy another monster with Storm Crimson of the Dragon Kingdom. Lot, what are you doing calling so late? Tony's tone was a little urgent, and it was clear that he was sitting with something indescribable right now. Hurry up, there's a monster in the Gulf of Alaska. What? Read violent novels, just go to Felu Fiction Network. It was obvious that a female voice appeared on Tony's side, but whether it was Pepper remained to be verified. The monster is currently less than 90 nautical miles from the coast of Alaska, and it is expected to log in an hour. Understand, I'm ready to go. Tony's voice was intermittent, and he looked like he was already getting dressed, and it was accompanied by a loud noise. I'm going to let you and the military deal with that monster. What about you? Tony was a little puzzled. I'm naturally dealing with the monster that appeared in the Bay of Bengal with the Dragon Kingdom. What? There are actually two monsters? Tony was a little surprised to hear this. That's right, that's why I let you and the military deal with the monsters on the other side of the Gulf of Alaska. Well, it's not early, I have to go. Roth said and hung up. Have you discussed it? Ready to go. Gwen and Sky had already arrived behind him at some point. Sky, are you going too? He looked at Sky, who was ready to go, with some surprise. Can't I go? Sky raised an eyebrow. Okay, you guys can stay on the plane later. Roth did not refuse to let them go with him. Anyway, the battle with the monster should be in shallow water. They only need to stay on the plane and watch from afar. Soon everyone was triggered by private jet. This time Roth did not drive the Tango Wolf, but intended to use Uindum. Of course, if the storm on the side of the Dragon Kingdom is strong, maybe it won't be his turn to appear. With the performance of Storm Crimson, it is still no problem to defeat the third-level kaiju beast. It depends on how its driver is. An hour later, they finally felt the Bay of Bengal, and at the same time, the Dragon Kingdom rushed over under his notice. Shallow waters a few kilometers from the coast of Andhra Pradesh. Roth and the people on the Dragon Kingdom's side converged. Mr. Lot, thank you for reminding us that we just discovered the whereabouts of this monster. The person who came to the Dragon Kingdom this time is still Xiaoliwen, the president of the Shaw Group. The monster is less than 10 minutes from ashore, you have to get ready. Roth said, looking at the teenage twins behind her. The two of them look almost exactly the same height as a combat uniform, and it is obvious that these two girls should be the drivers of the Storm Red. If you want to fly a Pacific Rim mech, you must sit in a heart-to-heart connection. And twins are the easiest to sit on. We'll be prepared. Xiaoliwen nodded, and then turned sideways to reveal the twin girls behind her. Introduce you, they are Xiao Yashuan and Xiao Yan, the two are twins, and they are also the driver of Storm Crimson. Lot nodded with a look like this, hello, you are the developer of Storm Crimson, how awesome. I didn't expect you to be from the Dragon Kingdom. The twin sister flowers also have almost the same voice, one looks mature and steady, the other looks lively and active. Seeing this, Roth nodded, you guys go and get ready, but you're going to fight the monsters later. Hearing this, the two sisters looked at Xiaoliwen. Go, don't lose the face of our Dragon Kingdom soldiers. Xiaoliwen nodded. Understood. The two sisters made a military salute and then walked towards Storm Crimson. By the way, Mr. Roth, I don't seem to have seen your mech. Xiaoliwen finally asked the doubts in her heart, this question she had wanted to ask since just now. Didn't it say that the two sides dealt with the monster together? Lot smiled when he heard this, no, 267 is in a hurry, if you can't defeat that monster, I will strike. Xiaoliwen frowned, a little unaware of the meaning of these words. But she didn't get to the bottom of it. She is still very confident in Storm Red, and the twin sisters also performed very well during the testing stage. Meanwhile, the earth slowly trembled, and the sea roared and lapped against the shore. At the same time, the shallow sea area of the misty fog finally revealed the figure of the monster. Roar, Shanlan let out a low roar, and the dull voice shocked people's hearts. Seeing the monster getting closer and closer, everyone fell silent. This was the first time they had seen the real body of the monster up close, and the sense of oppression was really terrifying. But fortunately, most of the soldiers Xiaoliwen brought with her this time were soldiers with excellent psychological quality, so there was no panic. Xiao Yashuan, Xiao Yan, you immediately activate the Storm Red to meet the enemy. Xiaoliwen ordered the two in the communicator with an unchanged face. Yes. The twin sisters responded at the same time, followed by the simultaneous raising of their legs in the cockpit. The next moment, I saw Storm Crimson raising his legs and slowly walking towards the kaiju beast. Rumble. Rumble. Compared to the mountains, the 89-meter-high Storm Red is more domineering, and almost every step you take, the earth and sea tremble. Mr. Roth, let's get on the plane and watch the battle up close. At this time, Xiaoliwen raised her hand and invited. No, there are still some things on my side. Roth waved his hand with a smile, and then turned around and walked to Gwen's side. There are so many girls to accompany him, how can he accompany each other? Jing Tian is not his dish. Seeing this, Xiaoliwen shrugged with some regret, but she didn't care too much. The plane slowly followed. At this time, Storm Crimson finally approached the monster Shanlan. There is an old saying in the Dragon Kingdom that says that first is strong, and then it suffers. The Xiao sisters obviously kept this sentence in mind at all times, only to see that they controlled the Storm Crimson to smash the monster's head with a punch. Rumble. The speed of this punch was very fast, but at the critical moment, Yama Lan retracted his head and let this punch hit the turtle shell. The terrifying power suddenly made the surrounding sea water shake. Immediately afterwards, Shanlan actually stood up from the sea water at once and rushed towards the Storm Red. Fortunately, Storm Crimson reacted quickly enough and took a few steps back in time so that he was not thrown down. If you are thrown into the sea, you are very passive. Those two little girls are driving well. Gwen saw that Storm Crimson actually had such a performance, and couldn't help but praise. The reflexes are not bad, but it's hard to say whether you can defeat this monster. Roth tasted the red wine in his glass and gave a pertinent evaluation. Maybe you don't have to make a move. Sky laughed. That's the best. If he could, he would naturally be lazy. With the performance of Storm Red, it is indeed possible to kill this third-level kaiju beast. Episode 88, and yet, it was at this very moment. I saw that Shanlan looked for an opportunity again and pounced, but Storm Crimson did not completely dodge, and one arm was bitten fiercely. Cracking sound. There was a burst of sparks, and it was clear that the arm was almost scrapped. The two sisters had no choice but to manipulate the other arm into a drill and stab the monster's softest abdomen. Poof. There was a splash of flesh and blood, and it was clear that this trick was still very useful. However, no matter what, Shanlan just didn't let go of his mouth, and still bit it hard. The two sisters had no choice but to release the encrypted multi-lobe electromagnetic cannon. Rumble. A burst of blue light flashed, and the electromagnetic cannon slammed into Shanlan's abdomen, which finally made Shanlan relax. Great, give me the chase. On the other plane, Saiwen clenched her fists excitedly. But things turned around again. I saw that after Shanlan wailed for a moment, his back like a crater actually erupted a large amount of flames towards the storm. The whole body was shrouded in high temperature, but for a moment, the two sisters felt a suffocation. That's because the surrounding air was all burned up by flames. Retreat, quickly evacuate and open the flame attack range. Saiwen kept directing in the communicator. The two Xiao sisters also recovered their sanity from that suffocation, and the two made a backflip at the same time. The next moment, I saw Feng Hong directly dodge the attack of the flames with a backflip. Roar. Seeing that the flames could not burn, Shanlan rushed up again. Give me a secret weapon. Saiwen ordered loudly. When the two sisters heard this, they immediately launched several missiles. Thundered. In an instant, the distance of 100 meters was all shrouded in the sparks of the explosion. Can you destroy that monster? Both Gwen and Sky looked intently at the center of the explosion. Lot shook his head, using Ultra to see through his eyes. He had seen the mountain unharmed. It was clear that this explosive weapon did not do much for monsters. Unless it's a nuclear bomb level explosion. Otherwise, it's better to use your fists. Sure enough. Of course, after the fire dispersed, I saw Shanlan roaring and rushing up. The unprepared storm was immediately pressed into the sea. Storm Crimson is already very bulky, coupled with the adsorption power of seawater more than 10 meters deep. The most important thing is to be pressed on it by Yama Arisher Hole. It's a problem to get up. Hearing the exclamation of the Xiao sisters, Saiwen was also a little anxious. After all, it cost nearly 10 billion to build a mecha, and the loss of one made Saiwen's heart drip blood. What's more, drivers are not so easy to find. Mr. Lot, I don't know if you can make a move. Storm Crimson will soon be unable to hold on. In an emergency, Saiwen could only contact Lot's side. Alright. Luo Ti was a little helpless. It seems that the training time of the two Xiao sisters is still too short to fully exert the strength of Storm Crimson, otherwise they should be able to easily kill this kaiju beast. There is no way, now he can only shoot. Just when Saiwen was in a hurry, she saw a flash of fire flying towards the monster, and then a giant armor appeared in the sky. This. Saiwen's eyes widened, because she found that the armor in front of her was not the last time she saw it in the exhibition hall, but a brand new armor. It turns out that he is Steel Superman. I should have thought of it a long time ago. Saiwen was a little annoyed. She had only discovered the identity of the other party until now. It is no wonder that the other party has the ability to manufacture mecha, but also sells mecha, and forms a mecha supervision association. It turns out that the other party really has that kind of strength. Meanwhile, Roth piloted Uindum and kicked the mountain directly out of the sky with a dive. Are you alright? It's okay. Thank you, Mr. Roth. The two sisters of the Xiao family quickly thanked each other, and then got up from the sea. Mr. Roth, let's deal with this monster together. Lot glanced at the stormy red in some of the broken eyes. I don't think so. As the words fell, I saw his hands pulled up and down, and an arc-shaped beam of light appeared between the armor's arms. Vertical guillotine. In an instant, a crescent-shaped white blade of light shot towards the mountain. Poof. The light shone through the body, and only after cutting through the sea, for thousands of meters from behind the mountain, did it disappear. When he looked at Shanlan, he saw his body split in the middle, and then fell to the sides. Well. That's awesome, that's incredible, isn't it? The two sisters of the Xiao family were directly dumbfounded by this scene, but they did not expect that the extremely ferocious monster just now was actually killed at once. This. After Saiwen was stunned for a moment, her eyes suddenly looked at Roth a little hot. Such a powerful technology is simply unprecedented, if you can get it. Okay, the monster has been solved, it's time to go back. Seeing that the monster corpse disappeared, and the system also sent a reminder that the mission was completed, Roth took back Uindum and flew to the private plane. Mr. Roth, please wait. Seeing that he was about to leave, Saiwen quickly stopped him in the communication. Is there anything else? Miss Xiao? It's too outrageous to call Miss Xiao, Mr. Lot, please call me Li Wen. Hearing this, Roth couldn't help but pout. This time is close, this woman must not be well. If Miss Xiao has anything to say, just say it. Seeing that he didn't call him by his name, Saiwen was a little disappointed. Mr. Roth, I don't know what the weapon you used just now is. Don't think about it, this weapon will not be sold. When Lot heard it, he didn't know what she was thinking. I'm willing to bid $100 billion. Saiwen directly offered a price, and she also paid for this technology. You better keep the money and equip Storm Crimson with some weapons. After Roth finished speaking, he hung up the communication. Such a woman is really a good calculation, but it is impossible to buy his vertical guillotine. He wasn't stupid enough to sell this technology. But for now, his purpose of deterrence has been achieved. With this kind of technological weapon that can easily kill monsters in seconds, I think that countries should not use it indiscriminately after creating Mecha. Seeing Roth leave, Saiwen couldn't help sighing. It seems that her idea is still too naive. But think about it, if she had that kind of technological power, she wouldn't sell it. Even mechs won't be taken out for sale. After all, this is a force that can change the world. The other side. Roth and they hadn't gone far when they received a communication from Tony. Hey, I guess it must be our side to solve the monster first. As soon as the phone was connected, Tony's slightly smelly voice was heard. The corners of Roth's mouth curled up slightly and smiled. We are on our way back. What? Impossible, how can you guys be fast on our side? The shell of that monster is so hard, the military's mecha is about to be scrapped. From just a few words, I could understand that the situation on Tony's side was not very good. The military's dangerous wanderer mechs are about to be scrapped, and it was Tony who found the monster's weakness before he took it down. Roth opened the system and looked at it, and sure enough, he got a total of 10,000 points. A level 3 monster is worth 35,000 points. 10. So far, the test results are not bad, and Tony has been able to easily defeat the level 3 monsters. It's just that the military of the ugly country and the drivers on the dragon country side are still too tender before they have experienced the battle with the monster. I think that after this battle, they will all be able to stand alone. It seems that it won't be long before the wormhole can be summoned. Tony was also quite happy to hear his words, and the two chatted for a while before hanging up. Back to New York. For the next month, Roth had to prepare the wormhole plan. The deep sea is not like land, and even the ultra-satellite chain cannot detect the bottom of the sea. Once the wormhole is summoned, he must find the wormhole entrance in the shortest possible time. When the time comes, let the mechs of various countries contain the other monsters, and he and Tony find an opportunity to blow up the wormhole. After having a complete plan. In this month, in addition to building the submarine probe, he is to check whether the mecha of various countries meet the standards. It turned out to be pretty good. Mechs from all over the world have passed the test and are now ready to fight monsters. Read violent novels, just go to Feilu Fiction Network. In particular, the dangerous rangers of the ugly country military and the storm crimson of the dragon country are no less than Tony's anti-monster armor. If you drag a level 4 monster, it should not be much of a problem. Seeing that everything was ready, then Roth did not waste time and directly summoned the wormhole. He had waited too long for this moment. Meanwhile, somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, at a depth of 3 kilometers, a light blue light suddenly appeared, and then this light gradually expanded outward, gradually revealing a wormhole like an abyss. After a few hours, the wormhole slowly expanded, and it did not stop until it was more than 20 meters later. Then a huge beast claw poked out of the wormhole, and a huge monster head with a face like a lizard came out of it. When the monster's entire body came out, a roar suddenly turned the entire sea upside down. And that's not the end of it. I saw that in the wormhole, one after another open chrysanthemum beasts continued to drill out. The first to drill out of the open chrysanthemum beast quietly surfaced and swam in one direction. The other side. A building underground research institute. Just after lying on the sofa with Gwen and chatting about watching American dramas, Alice's figure suddenly appeared in front of the two. Alice, can you stop blocking the TV? Gwen said and tilted her head to look at the TV behind her. It seemed that this TV series was indeed very attractive to her. Alice, what's going on? In fact, when Alice appeared, Roth had already guessed what was going on. Sure enough. Sir, a monster has been found at Pacific longitude 168.70299976 and latitude 24.90313887, and the target is heading towards the island country. Monster? Hearing the appearance of a monster, Gwen suddenly pulled his attention back. This is a satellite map. Alice said, displaying the satellite map on a virtual screen. I saw that in the somewhat dim Pacific Ocean, huge objects were swimming on the surface of the water. If you don't pay attention, you may think of it as a large animal, such as a blue whale. But if you look closely, you will find that the figure of this underwater giant has a hideous and terrifying dorsal fin, and from time to time it will show its head to breathe air. Its body size is about 80 meters long. It can be much larger than the average blue whale. But is there only one? Just as he was thinking so, Alice suddenly changed the map on the virtual screen, and saw another picture of an underwater giant. Sir, a second monster has appeared. What? Actually there is a second one? Gwen couldn't help but exclaim. Where does the other party appear? Lot asked with a frown. Location in North Pacific longitude 146.7002595, latitude 40.22725541. Calculate the range of appearance of two monsters. Roth folded his hands to his chest, and it would be nice to be able to calculate the location of the wormhole from where the two monsters surfaced. Calculating. Calculated location in Pacific longitude -176.4302911, latitude -3.00852336 inch. Sir, a third monster has appeared. Hearing the appearance of three monsters in a row that Alice spotted, Rao and Gwen frowned. What the hell is going on? Why do so many monsters suddenly appear? Roth shook his head. Let's inform the countries first to prepare for the battle of the monsters. The wormhole program begins. Then the next thing is to notify the countries to intercept the monster. Lot, you're not going to tell me that there are monsters again, are you? Tony, who was singing and dancing at a party, joked. The corner of Lot's mouth turned up slightly and smiled. You guessed right, and the number of monsters this time is a bit large. You have to prepare as soon as possible. What? Tony was visibly stunned. You're not kidding, are you? Today is not April Fool's Day. Seeing that he was still in the mood to joke, Roth couldn't help but roll his eyes. I'm not kidding. Hurry up and come over. The speed must be fast. It won't take long for the monsters to land. After that, he hung up the phone. Immediately afterwards, the countries were notified one after another, and the location and travel routes of several monsters that had appeared were sent to them. Knowing that several or more monsters have appeared, countries have also entered a state of emergency readiness. More than 10 minutes later, Tony quickly rushed to the Underground Research Institute of Ultra Technology. Roth also did not talk nonsense, and directly brought him to the satellite map. I saw that the map at this time was showing the Pacific Ocean, and more than 10 red dots flashing and moving appeared on the good map. What are these? Tony keenly noticed that the little red dots were a little unusual. Roth didn't explain. He tapped his finger on one of the red dots, and the map zoomed in instantly. I saw a colorful monster covered in coral reefs emerging from the water, heading in one direction. This? Tony's eyes widened suddenly. If a red dot is a monster, then wouldn't so many red dots mean? That's right. Seeing his surprised expression, Roth nodded. 12 giant monsters have appeared in the Pacific Ocean today, and their smallest ones are more than 60 meters in size. How could so many monsters suddenly appear? Tony didn't understand something. Lot did not speak. He continued to pull the map, circled the location of all the monsters, and then pointed to the center of the circle and said, I suspect that this is the nest of monsters, and I have sent drones to investigate. I believe it will not be long before I get accurate information. So what do we do now? Tony frowned. The fastest monster is in the island country. It takes about 2 hours. We have to let the other mechs go to each other. We have to find out the source of the monster. Roth said with a serious face. I'll help too. Tony didn't want to just wait, so he decisively contacted Jarvis and dispatched the Mark 37 Hammerhead deep sea armor. This suit of armor can withstand extreme pressure. It works even in the deep sea. Of course, this is just a futile effort in Roth's opinion, and the underwater probe drone he previously developed is now close to reaching its destination. Sure enough. More than 10 minutes later, the underwater probe transmitted the picture. As soon as the probe entered the water, it found that the monster that had been huge was floating up from the deep sea, and then the monster quickly swam in the other direction. Seeing this scene, Roth and Tony looked at each other. Episode 89. Now Tony completely believed his guess. There was definitely something under the water that teleported the monster over. As the probe goes deep underwater. When it reached more than 2,000 meters, a blue light was detected, as well as the figures of 4 giant monsters. 4 monsters guard a wormhole that emits blue light. Under their gaze, they saw a giant monster emerge from the wormhole. The monster really appeared from here. Tony looked at this scene with some surprise. He didn't expect the monster to come like this. Sure enough, monsters keep appearing from there, and if this continues, I'm afraid the whole world will become a paradise for monsters. Roth said with a solemn face. We have to stop those monsters. Gwen clenched her fists. How can I stop it? Susan asked this question. Tony thought for a moment with his hands in his chest. Maybe you can try it with a nuclear bomb. Luo nodded. I agree. Anyway, we must destroy that entrance. Then without further ado, let's go. Tony had already prepared the anti-monster armor and was ready to go for a big fight. There are 4 monsters guarding the entrance. We have to call Storm Crimson and Dangerous Wanderers, let the others drag the monsters that are about to come ashore, and we will blow up the passage. Roth suggested. That's a good idea. Tony nodded in agreement with his arrangement. Without nonsense, Roth quickly informed Storm Crimson and the Dangerous Rangers. Need our help? At this time, everyone from the Ultra Combat team came over. Just as Lot was about to refuse, Gwen suddenly said, I can drive the Tango Wolf, eh? Alright, he thought about it and agreed. One more person and more strength. In fact, Gwen has also driven Tango Wolves before, so there is no need to worry about not being able to play the strength of Tango Wolves. Susan and the others had no choice but to stay. After all, it was a battle at sea, and they really couldn't interfere. Electric people can fly, but this guy has to finish as soon as he encounters water. Just don't take them. After some preparation, the 3 quickly set off towards the place where the Pacific wormhole was located. 2 hours later, the island country took the lead in welcoming the first kaiju beast to go ashore, and this time there were 2 mecha that faced the kaiju beast. And the other mech is none other than the Stick Country mecha. After all, the Stick Country also knows that after the monster invades the island country like this, the next target must be their Stick Country, so it can't be done without helping. Meanwhile, all major countries around the world are also preparing to intercept the scattered kaiju beasts. Fortunately, there are enough countries that have created mecha, and they can almost deal with a monster with 2 mecha. 403. In this way, it can also block the invasion of the kaiju beasts. And the other side. Roth, Gwen, and Tony had now met the Dangerous Rangers and Storm Crimson. And the sea below them is where the wormhole is. There are currently 4 monsters guarding the wormhole, so we need to have people lure these 4 monsters away, and then one of them will drop the bomb. Speaking of this, Lot looked at Tony as well as the Dangerous Wanderer and the Stormy Red Driver. Everyone did not speak. They all knew that it was very dangerous to either lure away the monster or release the nuclear bomb, because the wormhole did not know when more powerful monsters would appear. And the 4 monsters guarding the wormhole also look very difficult to mess with. Seeing that everyone did not speak, Gwen stood up and said, let's lure away those monsters. Lot, you go and blow up the wormhole, so that you can help us as soon as possible. That's fine. Tony nodded in agreement. The Danger Rangers and Storm Crimson also had no opinion. Okay, let's get ready. Roth didn't talk nonsense, and this time he did have a nuclear bomb detonation device ready. As long as the nuclear bomb is placed close to the wormhole, it can be detonated at regular intervals. It is best for him to carry out this task. After the task was assigned, everyone was seated and prepared. Immediately afterwards, 5 mechs slowly sank into the water from the sky. In the water, the mechs will be affected to some extent, but the monsters will also be affected by the resistance of the current. After everyone advanced at the bottom of the sea for a moment, they slowly approached the wormhole. Here, they were already able to clearly see 4 huge monsters. Roth is still very familiar with these 4 monsters. They are the Varus, Abomination, Virus, and the Standing Tail Mouse. And each one is a level 4 monster, and the strength is very powerful without looking. Let's act. Lot's deep voice sounded in everyone's ears. Immediately afterwards, Tony and Gwen and their 4 mechs outflanked them from 4 directions. At a distance of 100 meters, 4 mechs fired missiles at the same time, attracting the attention of the 4 kaiju beasts. Roar. Even underwater, you can hear the roar that shakes the sea. The plan was very successful, and I saw that all 4 monsters chased after the mecha in front of him. Very good. Roth nodded in satisfaction, and then he seized the opportunity to quickly approach the wormhole and take out the nuclear bomb he had prepared earlier. Just put the nuclear bomb next to the wormhole and you're done. However, at this moment, a huge claw suddenly stretched out from the wormhole. The next moment, a hideous and terrifying monster poked out a head from it. It's a poisonous woman. Lot's pupils shrank suddenly, and he recognized at a glance that the kaiju beast in front of him was the 5th level kaiju beast poisonous woman. But fortunately, this guy has not completely come out, and there is still time. Thinking of this, he quickly placed the nuclear bomb next to the wormhole, and then started the 5-minute countdown. That's enough time for him to stay away from here. However, just when he thought he had enough time to evacuate, he saw that the poisonous woman swooped out of the wormhole. The huge size of 182 meters suddenly disturbed the surrounding seawater. Roar. A roar clouded everything around him, and then a giant claw slapped towards him. Roth frowned. He didn't want to entangle with this monster here now, so he turned around and swam quickly towards the water. However, the poisonous woman's speed was amazing, and just as he quickly moved away, a huge claw grabbed his foot. Damn it. Before Roth could fight back, he was thrown heavily to the bottom of the sea by a huge force. Fortunately, with seawater as a buffer, this knockout was not injured. However, a lot of time is wasted in this way. It seems that it is impossible not to teach you a lesson. Lot looked at the poisonous woman coldly, and saw him pull his hands. Vertical guillotine. A crescent-shaped blade of light quickly cut towards the poisonous woman. Poof. The unsuspecting poisonous woman was cut in the abdomen, and in an instant, a large amount of green liquid polluted a large area of water. It looked like he was injured, but he wasn't killed. Roth couldn't manage so much, so he quickly stayed away from the wormhole. There are 3 minutes left. The nuclear bomb has been planted, are you okay? In the communication channel, Roth asked everyone. Little meaning, that monster was swirled by my brush. The first to reply was Tony, who could hear that he was relaxed now, and as long as he found a shallow area, he could try to kill the monster. Immediately afterwards, the Dangerous Rangers and Storm Crimson also reported that they were safe, and although they were no match for the monsters, it was still no problem to escape. However, in the end, Gwen did not reply to the message. Gwen, what's wrong with you? Roth had a bad feeling. I'm stuck in a trench. Gwen's voice was tinged with crying, and now she was only 1,000 meters away from the wormhole, and she was still within the blast range. That's why she was a little anxious. But the monster blocked her in this trench, unable to get out at all. Don't worry, I'll be right here. Roth didn't say much nonsense, and after finding the location of the Tango Wolf, he quickly turned around and swam towards the deeper trench. Soon, he saw the monster roaring above the trench. Abomination, eat my 8-point light wheel. A light wheel condensed in Lot's hand, and then the light wheel gradually became larger, and then threw it directly towards the monster Abomination. I saw the light wheel cutting through the monster's Abomination's claws at an extremely fast speed. Poof. A huge claw was directly cut off, and a large amount of green blood gushed out. But that's not the end of it. I saw that the 8-point light wheel turned back under the control of Lot's ultramental power, and then cut off the other claw that the monster abhorred. Roar, the monster roared up to the sky in abomination. Immediately after that, the 8-point light wheel shuttled back and forth, and the Abomination was instantly unloaded into 8 pieces. Roth. At this time, the wail of the monster was heard, and Gwen also came out of the trench. Go quickly, it's only a minute before the bomb explodes. AAE, read violent novels, just go on Felu Fiction Network, Gwen nodded, and then quickly flew towards the sea. When the two had just surfaced, a shock disrupted the entire sea. Quick! Roth knew that the explosion was not over yet, and the kinetic energy generated by the explosion of a nuclear bomb in water was much stronger than on land, and if they did not leave quickly, I am afraid that they would also be affected. The two did not dare to stay longer, and quickly flew towards the distance. Finally, the kinetic energy of the nuclear bomb burst to the surface of the water, and a huge mushroom cloud formed on the surface of the sea. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully destroying the wormhole and earning 500,000 points. Hearing the system's prompt, Roth couldn't help but clench his fists excitedly. Finally, he gathered these 500,000 points, and now he could redeem the Severn Ultraman shapeshifter. According to his speculation, the strength of the Ultra Brothers is each above the Heavenly Father level strength. And the Heavenly Father level is not common in the early stage of the Marvel world, and the common ones are Odin, Gai, Dormammu, Hela, and Sultel. But there are more in the later stage. Both Thor, the god of thunder, and Scarlet Witch can reach the level of Heavenly Father. There are also unknown time administrations and Tenjin groups, etc. Compared to these people, the sub-Heavenly Father level Thanos is just a younger brother. Mr. Roth, ask for support. At this moment, the two sisters of the Shao family cried for help in the communication, and it was obvious that they had been entangled by the monster. Hold on, we'll come right away. Lot didn't talk nonsense either, and rushed towards Storm Crimson with Gwen. If it is a 3rd-generation mecha or a 4th-generation mecha, there is no problem in dealing with the 4th-level kaiju beast alone. But with the strength of a generation of Storm Crimson, it is indeed somewhat difficult to deal with the 4th-level kaiju beast alone. A moment later, several kilometers away, they found Storm Crimson and Veyron Dragon struggling in the water. The swift dragon is huge, reaching a height of 132 meters, weighing 3230, and a long tail firmly binds the Storm Red. No matter how much you struggle, you can't break free. Seeing that the mecha has been seriously damaged, I am afraid that it will not be long before seawater will pour into the cockpit. At that time, the two sisters will be finished. At this moment, a light will shot out from a distance, instantly cutting off the tail of the swift dragon. Roar! The swift dragon roared, directly let go of the Storm Crimson, and turned his gaze to the direction where the light wheel flew from. Immediately after that, the swift dragon plunged into the water and quickly approached Roth's side. Gwen, stay away. Roth looked underwater and got the dark shadow path that was rapidly approaching. Gwen also knew she couldn't help, so she didn't bother. Rumble. At this moment, I saw the swift dragon quickly come out of the water and only bite towards Roth in the sky. It's just coming. Lot saw the opportunity to sideways to avoid the bite of the swift dragon, and then grabbed its tail with both hands. Give it to me. In the surprised gazes of Gwen and the Shao sisters, I saw him holding the tail of the swift dragon in both hands, and a spin ran the swift dragon into the sky. Then he crossed his hands to form a cross. Cluster rays. In an instant, a brilliant light instantly hit the swift dragon in the sky. Thundered. I saw a spark burst out in the sky, and Xuanlong's huge body was instantly vaporized by the 400,000 degree high heat energy destruction light of the cluster ray. Even the slag is not left. Good, good. Not only the Shao family sisters, but even Xiao Liwen and the others, who had seen all this through the storm crimson in the Dragon Kingdom, were all stunned. They couldn't imagine that they could have such a powerful weapon that could easily kill a monster of that size. This is really terrible. Roth is also the first time to use cluster rays. I have to say that this move is indeed very powerful. Among all his weapons, cluster rays can be said to be the strongest. But the energy consumed is also quite a lot. Fortunately, Uindam has more backup energy, and can use quantum teleportation at any time to replace backup energy. So don't worry about not having enough energy. Mr. Roth, help, this side can't stand it. At this time, the two drivers of the dangerous wanderer also began to call for help. Roth was a little helpless. It seems that the level 4 monsters are indeed a little difficult for a generation of armor. There is no way, he can only go to the rescue. Just after he killed another level 4 kaiju beast, there was finally good news from Tony's side. Haha, this monster is just that, it was finally killed by me. From Tony's laughter, you can tell that he is in a very happy mood. After all, he had solved the 4th level kaiju beast alone. Don't be happy too early. Although the nuclear bomb successfully exploded, it is not clear whether the wormhole has disappeared. I have asked the drone to go and check it, and there will be results soon. Roth directly poured cold water on him. Of course, he naturally would not directly say that the wormhole had been blown up. It may not be much in a short time, but over time, it is inevitable that people will wonder if he is related to the appearance of monsters. So it's better to be cautious. A moment later, the drone transmitted an image of the nuclear explosion center. I saw that the original location of the wormhole was already empty at this time, leaving only a bottomless pit. Great, so that the monster thing is solved. Gwen patted his chest, finally relieved. No, there are still monsters scattered everywhere that haven't been solved yet. Lot shook his head. These level 3 or 4 monsters were heading around the world and causing great damage. Whether the mechs of various countries can handle it is still a big question. Thinking of this, he checked the location of the major monsters through the satellite. The existing monsters have now invaded the town and wreaking havoc. As for the mecha that intercepted the monster, it had already been dismantled. Roth sent the news to everyone, and everyone was silent for a while. We can't go on like this, we have to help them. Tony said as he turned and flew into the distance. Although it has just experienced a big war, with quantum teleportation technology, there is no need to worry about energy problems. Seeing this, Roth was a little helpless, but he couldn't let these monsters go. Your mechs can still fight, right? Storm Crimson can still fight. The damage on my side is a little serious, I'm afraid it won't help. The result is not bad, although the dangerous wanderer is badly damaged, but Storm Red can still fight. Episode 90, Gwen, you immediately go to the island country to help drag the monster. I have to go to the Solomon Islands first. After observing just now, he found that 2 kaiju beasts landed in the Solomon Islands at the same time, and it happened that the Solomon Islands had no mecha defense. Now that a large number of towns have been destroyed, if they do not go again, I am afraid that there will be heavy casualties. Okay, be careful. After Gwen promised, he didn't forget to care. Well, you just need to drag the monster as much as possible, don't fight the monster head-on, just wait for me to deal with it. After Roth ordered, he quickly flew towards the Solomon Islands. Time does not wait for anyone, and now a large number of human beings die every minute and second, and he does not dare to delay more. For the next few days, Roth traveled around the world to deal with monster incidents. And this time, there were more than 10 monsters and wormholes, which also caused a sensation in the whole world. Everyone knows very well that this is definitely an alien invasion. Although countless people died under the monster disaster, fortunately, they successfully repelled the monster army. It was a busy few days. After solving all the kaiju beasts, Lot was finally able to rest. But soon he will definitely be busy again. After all, this time, the monster invasion has caused some great impact. There will definitely be more countries and chaebol who want to buy mecha technical drawings. So then he got busy. Taking advantage of the time now, Roth directly exchanged the Saiwen Ultraman shapeshifter. The Saiwen Ultraman shapeshifter is a pair of glasses with a red frame. On the outside, there is nothing peculiar about it. He thought about it and put the glasses on directly. The next moment, I saw a dazzling white light released from my whole body. When the light dissipated, Saiwen Ultraman officially appeared. Is this the power that belongs to Saiwen Ultraman? Lot looked down at his hands, and then clenched them, although they were not gigantic, but he could feel that his strength was terrifying. At the same time, he also had emblem rays, cluster rays, three-part cluster rays, new cluster rays, and reduction beams in his mind. And dozens of other light and fighting skills. It can be said that at this time, he has been able to exert the full strength of Saiwen Ultraman. But the only drawback is the lack of energy, and if he fights a gigantic, he can only last for a maximum of 3 minutes. Sure enough, did the 3-minute limit remain with him? Unless it is able to exchange for a real plasma spark tower. Under the energy supply of the plasma spark tower, he can fight with all his strength without limit. At that time, he will evolve into a real Ultraman due to the energy of the plasma spark tower, and not just fight with the shapeshifter. However, the exchange price of the technical drawings of the plasma spark tower 1 million points. Roth had a headache. After using 500,000 points, he now only had 160,000 points left. It seems that it will take a long time to redeem the technical drawings of the real plasma spark tower. Huh? Are you Roth? Is this your newly developed armor? Sky happened to come to the research institute at this time, and he was suddenly a little curious when he saw a strange armor standing in the laboratory. You recognize this? Lot lifted his transformation and looked helplessly at Sky, who was like a curious baby. Sky shrugged. There was no one else who could get in here. Speaking of which, how do you feel about working here lately? Roth went to the bar and poured 2 glasses of red wine, then handed one to Sky. It feels good, it's just busy. Sky complained after taking the glass. I think you'll get used to it slowly. Roth smiled and said, by the way, there is something about your parents. I paid attention to it when I helped S.H.I.E.L.D. last time. How? Sky looked at him expectantly. There should be a surprise waiting for you after a while. Roth didn't explain much. He was going to take Sky to find the obelisk for a while, and maybe meet her parents then. Can't you just say it now? Sky pouted, a little dissatisfied. Of course not. Roth shook his head. Now that he said it, it was not called a surprise. And maybe Sky will sneak away to find someone after learning about her parents. So it's better not to tell her after thinking about it. Sky was a little annoyed when she saw that he couldn't get in, and then she came to Lot, put her arms around his neck and kissed him. Seeing this, Roth looked confused. What is the situation? However, there is a cheap knot to occupy, is the king bastard. So his hands also very honestly wrapped around Sky's slender waist, and then plunged into a deep kiss. After a moment, Sky let go of him breathlessly. Now you can tell me. Of course. No way. Roth shook his head anyway. You. Sky's teeth itched, and he sacrificed his hue to actually not scent his mouth. Don't be too anxious, maybe it's not a good thing to see your parents. Roth said and turned back to the laboratory, and when he left, he turned back and smiled. By the way, the little mouth is so sweet. Sky stomped his foot angrily, but helplessly. At noon, Roth rarely left the underground research institute and went to the high-rise garden to eat with Susan Gwen and them. Suddenly, a message on TV caught his idea. Dear audience, I am now at Stonehenge, tracking and reporting on an interesting story that happened today. The police received the alarm just after 11 a.m. today, rushed to the scene, and a seemingly normal male tourist came here and began to run naked, holding scientific instruments, and went into the sea, shouting that he was trying to save them. This person was subsequently confirmed to be the famous astrophysicist Dr. Eric Sevig, who is currently in police custody awaiting trial. How? Interested in this news? Gwen saw that he had been staring at the TV, and couldn't help but be a little curious. I know him. At this time, Hope on the side answered, I remember that my father worked with this person before, and there were some deals. Hearing this, Roth remembered that Dr. Eric had indeed had some contact with Hank Pym. Speaking of which, Dr. Eric is also the most photographed doctor in Marvel, and he was also present when Quake came before. After that, Loki controlled him to open the portal using the cosmic cube. So now it's no surprise that it's Thor too. Suddenly Lot's eyes lit up. Since he knew the plot in advance, could he accept the ether particles? Previously, the cosmic cube was taken by Thor. No way, you can't go back to Asgard without cosmic cube Thor. And Loki's psychic scepter was also taken by S.H.I.E.L.D. At that time, he didn't care too much. After all, whether it was the cosmic cube or the psychic scepter, these 2 infinity stones did not have much effect on him. But ether particles are different. Ether particles, also known as reality gems, can turn all dreams into reality if users can master the full power of reality gems. From arbitrarily modifying the laws of physics and chemistry, to directly creating reality and erasing objects. What users think is right and what is right, what they think is wrong and what is wrong. This shows the overbearing nature of real gemstones. Of all the Infinity Stones, the Reality Gem is arguably the most powerful. Even if you don't use this gemstone, you can't give it to others. It can't be handed over to that universe collector. Otherwise, wouldn't it be equivalent to giving it to Thanos for nothing? Besides, if you keep an Infinity Stone in your hand, all the provinces will be snatched away by Thanos. Thanos, who collected 5 Infinity Stones, is definitely not as weak as in the movie, and it is difficult to say whether Saiwen Ultraman's strength can defeat Thanos the Infinity Gauntlet. Thinking of this, Ross smiled and said, I plan to go to London tomorrow. Do any of you want to go together, to London? What for? Susan asked with some curiosity. Go get something. Roth explained simply. I have class tomorrow. Gwen looked helpless. There are also things to deal with on the PIM company, and it may not be able to get out. Hope also shook his head helplessly. Don't look at me, the company still has so many things to deal with. Susan shrugged, although she wanted to go, but unfortunately did not have that time. Then it's just Sky going with me. Roth looked at Sky on the side. Sky was stunned. Me? There's been nothing going on lately. Then it's settled. This trip to London was just to get etheric particles, but it didn't take so many people. If it goes well, you should be able to come back soon. But the Dark Elves are a problem. Read violent novels, just go to Felu Fiction Network. Once you let this group of guys know that ether particles are on Earth, they will definitely be invaded. Of course, with Lot's current strength, he is not afraid. It's a big deal to transform into Severn when the time comes, and directly destroy all the Dark Elves. With such an idea. Following. Roth and Sky boarded a private jet to London. Alice, find me a doctor of astronomy named Jane Foster. Yes sir, please wait. Who is it? Sky, who was sitting opposite, was a little curious about the name. It's an important clue to the search for that thing this time. Roth explained simply. What's that thing? Sky was even more curious, and she still didn't know what Lot was looking for. That thing is called an etheric particle, also called the Reality Gem, and it is one of the 6 Infinity Stones with the ability to modify reality. There was nothing to do, and Roth didn't mind explaining the Infinity Stones for her. Well, sounds amazing. Sky was still a little confused after listening to it. Roth sighed helplessly. In short, you just need to know that it is a very powerful treasure, but this treasure may also attract the attention of aliens, and there may be an alien invasion at that time. Is it a monster? Of course not, it's the Dark Elves. What is a Dark Elf? 0 for flowers 0, Legend has it that it is a race in the dark world of what Alhiam, a race full of aggression and destruction. Sir, found it. Just as Lot was impatiently explaining, Alice finally found her goal. The map zoomed in on the virtual screen and finally froze at 10 Downing Street in London. The target was confirmed in a cafe at 10 Downing Street. Very good, let's find a place to land first. Successfully found Jane Foster, Roth was in a good mood, and then he only needed to find the place where the gods sealed the etheric particles according to Jane Foster. Soon the two headed to the cafe where Jane Foster was. Entering the cafe, Roth soon finds Jane Foster, who is dating a man. May I excuse me? You are? Richard, Jane's blind date, looked back at the two with some doubt. Wait, I seem to know you. Jane Foster frowned and thought. She carefully looked at Roth's handsome appearance, and the more she looked, the more familiar she felt. Hey, are you the founder of Ultra Technology, that genius scientist Lot? At this moment, a clever and eccentric girl ran over on the other side. And recognized Lot's identity at a glance with this girl. So you can recognize it? Roth was originally wearing sunglasses, and even Jane Foster didn't recognize them, but he didn't expect the girl in front of him to recognize it at once. And the black-haired girl in front of her is not unexpected, it is Jane's good girlfriend, Jane Foster. It's really you. Daisy Louise and Jane Foster, as well as Charlie on the side, were stunned. After all, this person in front of him is not just the chairman and genius scientist of Ultra Technology. He is a legendary figure who has built Mecha and created Mecha for countries to stop the invasion of monsters. Seeing such a legendary figure here, it is no wonder that the three of them are so shocked. SHHHH. Roth made a silent motion. Understood, big star. Daisy Louise whispered, and looked around, and found that no one noticed this side. Hello, my name is Daisy Louise. Daisy Louise stretched out her hand with a look of excitement. Hello Miss Louise, and Miss Foster. Roth smiled and shook their hands. You haven't introduced this person next to you yet. Daisy Louise pointed to Sky behind him. I'm Sky, Lot's girlfriend. Sky stepped forward and hugged his arm and offered to introduce. Lot raised his eyebrows when he heard this, but did not explain. When Daisy Louise heard this, she suddenly looked regretful. Hello, my name is Richard. At this time, Richard, who was sitting on the side and was a little uncomfortable, also introduced himself. Hello. Ross smiled and shook his hand. So what the hell did you find us? Daisy Louise was a little curious. The other party and them are obviously not people of the world, so why did the other party find them? Miss Lewis, your detection instrument should have detected something different. We are more curious about that thing, so I want to go and see it with you. Daisy Louise looked surprised. How do you know? But that's not mine, it's Jane's stuff. That's why I came to find too. Ross smiled. Wait, is my detector responsive? Jane still has some things to understand. Yes, I came here to talk to you about this. Daisy Louise said and pulled out the palm-sized detector. Jane took the detector and looked at it, and found that the detector did have been responding, and if it hadn't been for Roth looking for it, she would definitely think that the detector was broken. But this is not necessarily a good thing. Jane looked at Daisy, who was excited next to her, a little helpless. Can you please show me somewhere? Lot smiled. Of course it's fine. Daisy Louise agreed. That's trouble. Roth thanked him. In fact, this detection device is not troublesome to make. But since Jane has this detector in her hand and knows the specific location, there is no need for him to make a detector. As long as you follow the two, you will definitely be able to find the place where the etheric particles are sealed. That. Jane looked at Charlie with some embarrassment. No way this was a blind date between the two, although she didn't come voluntarily. It's okay, your affairs are more important, go quickly. Charlie is not an unreasonable person, knowing that this matter is very heavy, otherwise he would not have attracted this big man. Sorry, then we'll go. Jane smiled apologetically, and then the few people left the coffee shop together. In front of a red pickup truck outside the door. Hey, who is this? Jane looked at the man in the back seat and said with some doubt. He's my intern. Daisy Louise explained casually.